Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts. Start with a divorce and marry Hermione Backhanded. Chapter 51. That's how much happier I feel. Cousin, that Dolly is the son of someone who wants to work with his father. Always pestering me. Quote, Pauline said to Braun with some dissatisfaction. By the way, Pauline, what's your full name? Braun asked coldly. Pauline was stunned for a moment. Pauline Main. What's wrong? Quote. Nothing. Curious to ask. Braun said casually. If he guessed correctly, his uncle should be the Maine who went to the Dursleys' house as a guest in the original book. If Dobby hadn't stepped in and dunked the cake on their heads, the Dursleys' rig would have been sold. He understood that his uncle's surname had changed from Foley to Maine. It's not just your own home. Almost all pure-blood families have squibs after being sent into the Muggle world. The last name will be changed. This is a default rule in pureblood. It's just that compared to other pure-blood families, at least the Foley family will not kick the squib people out of the family tree, and the name will still be retained on it. And the Black family, which claims to be forever pure, has done too much. They claim to be always pure, but in fact they are kicking the squib people out of the family tree. This is no different from covering ears and stealing bells. Of course, they didn't end very well. The people in the family are basically dead. The only one stricken Sirius is still locked up in Azkaban at the moment. Cousin, don't you throw this fist cover. Look at the fist sleeve spinning around Braun's finger. Pauline couldn't help but ask. Braun said casually. I think it's interesting. I'm going to take it back to show my friends. Quote. Braun replied. In fact, he just didn't want to waste brain cells thinking about Christmas presents. Just give this thing to Ronald. He hadn't seen this thing anyway. Just tell him it's a favorite gift for Muggle boys. He must have accepted it happily. And taking Dolly's fist holster away himself can be regarded as saving Harry Potter's life. Otherwise, he would have to use his little face to open the fist. Oh, I always seemed out of place because I was too kind. Quote. What did you say? Nothing. I mean, is there any food here? I ate a little less at noon and I was a little hungry. Quote. Pauline raised her head. I remember crossing this road and turning left and there was a dessert shop. How about we go to pudding? When? Hey, be careful. Quote. Before he could finish speaking, Braun rushed up and grabbed the hand of a little girl who was about to cross the street before waiting for the green light. The girl seemed a little frightened. Somehow, as soon as Braun grabbed her hand, he felt a force bounce him off. Bang! Braun slammed into the street lamp. Fortunately, the impact of this force is not large. Just grinning at Braun didn't hurt anything else. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. Quote. The girl said a little confused. Cousin, are you all right? Pauline first looked around with some concern. After finding that Braun was no big deal, he stood up and pinched his waist. What's going on with you? My cousin was kind enough to help you, otherwise you would have been hit by a car long ago. Why are you still beating people? Quote. As he spoke, his voice lowered again. Moreover, with so much effort, it seemed that he was afraid of being beaten, and he carefully retreated. Just now she saw Braun fall and was a little anxious. But after reacting at the moment, he couldn't help but get scared, and he only saw Braun pull the girl over and be thrown out. I didn't see it clearly because of the perspective. I thought Braun had been beaten. He shouted in a hurry. But then he thought that even Braun was not an opponent, and his small body would definitely not be able to hold up, so his voice lowered again. Yes, I'm sorry. I really don't know what's going on. Quote. The girl was at a loss. She didn't know what was going on, she only felt a tension in her heart, and then Braun was ejected. At this moment, Braun has slowly stood up holding the street lamp. The thick clothes he was wearing and the heavy snow on the ground did not hurt him. Pauline, it's none of her business. She shouldn't have known what was going on. Quote. Cousin, how are you? Pauline hugged Braun with some concern. Nothing, just a fall. She should have been a magic riot. I didn't control it for a while. Quote. Pauline nodded understandingly, although she didn't quite understand what a magic riot was, but she probably knew that it might be a sign of a wizard. That is to say, this girl in front of you also has a chance to become a wizard. Can't help but feel some good feelings for her. Braun just wanted to go back. But he was stopped by the girl. You, hello. What is Magic Riot? And are you really all right? My dad is at the mall not far away, and I can get him to take you to the hospital. Quote. Just finished speaking. Then I saw a slightly chubby blonde man hurrying over, still holding a bunch of things in his hand. It seems a little anxious. But he was visibly relieved to see the girl. Hermione, how many times have I said it? Can't run around on your own. Quote. Sorry Dad, I won't next time. Seeing her daughter confess, the man didn't say anything more. Is this your classmate? Did this kid fall as a problem? Need my help? Hey, you are Pauline, Mr. Mason's daughter. Quote. Pauline's attention was on Braun just now. At this moment, I heard someone shouting his name. As soon as he looked up, he couldn't help but be surprised. Your Uncle Granger. Mr. Granger expressed concern. That's right, it's me. What happened to your little companion? Quote. Dad, it's... Before Hermione could finish speaking, Braun interrupted. Hello sir, I accidentally fell just now thanks to Miss Granger for helping me, thank you very much. Mr. Granger first looked approvingly at his somewhat stunned daughter. Then humbly said, Is it? It's really nothing. Are you okay? Where is your home and do you want me to give you a ride? Quote. Braun hesitated, but thought that if he walked back in his current situation, he would definitely not be able to do so. Although it didn't hurt him. But the one that was hit was not very comfortable. So he nodded. Thank you so much. I'm Pauline's cousin, and you can just send me to Pauline's house. Quote. Mr. Granger was a little surprised. As the full-time dentist of the Mason family, he had not heard that the real estate tycoon had any relatives. But looking at Pauline's concerned look, it is not fake. Okay, kid, you and Hermione are here waiting for me to drive the car over. Quote. After speaking, he put down his things and hurried back. 3 teenagers, standing together in an awkward atmosphere. Hermione blushed and said, That's what, thank you. Otherwise, Dad should talk about me again. Quote. Braun is grateful for not speaking out about her own crossing the street. Nothing. By the way, I haven't asked your name yet. My name is Braun Foley. This is my cousin Pauline Main. Hello, my name is Hermione. Hermione Granger. The girl is generous. At the moment, I heard the hair tied together in front of me with a black framed glasses and braces admit to myself. Braun's heart was filled with excitement and surprise. No wonder he didn't recognize Hermione. In fact, the gap between the appearance of the girl in front of me and the one written in the book is indeed a little big. At least Hermione in the book is also an ordinary-looking little girl, and she is a little sloppy because of her slovenliness. But the girl in front of her is not only neatly dressed at the moment, but also has a fair face that can be seen as a beauty billet even if she is young. I thought it was Hermione in the book, but I didn't expect it to be in the movie. Braun muttered. Seeing Braun muttering a little, Hermione couldn't help but ask. What are you talking about? Braun waved his hand. Nothing. By the way, reacquaintance. My name is Braun Foley, a wizard. Well, prepare. And my sister she too, and of course, so are you. Quote. You, what do you say? Sorcerer, are you telling fairy tales? Quote. Hermione asked a little dumbfounded. Braun's words are too bizarre. So much so that she couldn't accept it at all. I didn't lie to you, like the force you just bounced me off, do you think it's science? Hermione wanted to say something else. But that's when Mr. Granger's car came. The 3 little ones kept silent in tacit agreement. Come on, kids, get in the car. Let me take you home. Quote. Braun and Pauline hadn't gone far. So it didn't take long for the car to arrive at Villa Main. Mr. Foley was chatting with his brother about the past, and when he saw a strange car outside, he couldn't help but say, Abel, are you a guest? Guest? Abel was a little puzzled. Today was Christmas Eve and he had turned down all the people who came to visit him in advance. It stands to reason that no one will come. Looking up at the place where my brother said, I saw an ordinary black car parked outside the door. Feeling that the car was somewhat familiar, I suddenly said after looking at the license plate. It's my dentist, but I don't know what he's here for. Wait a minute, I'll take a look. Quote. Saying that, he got up and put on his clothes and walked towards the door. Hey, Granger. Quote. Hello, Mr. Mason. Is it time for a dental checkup? Can you please another day? Today I have a guest at home. Quote. No, Sir, your time has not yet arrived. Then you come. Before he could finish speaking, Abel heard his daughter's voice. Dad, Pauline, oh Merlin, oh God, Braun, what's wrong with that? Quote. Looking at his daughter supporting Braun, who was walking crookedly, Abel asked in surprise. Then he stepped forward and hugged Braun with concern. What's wrong with you guys? Pauline got Braun's instructions on the way. Said, my cousin fell on the road, thanks to Uncle Granger for sending us over. Braun, you're so careless. Then turn to Mr. Granger and thank him. Thanks to you, Wendell. Thank you so much. Quick, come inside. Quote. Mr. Granger is also a perceptive man. After hearing Abel's words, he quickly pushed away. No, Mr. Maine, I still have to hurry home. My daughter was still sitting in the car. Quote. Abel glanced inside the car, and there was indeed a little girl sitting there. It is not good to force it to stay immediately. I can only say with gratitude again. All right, Wendell, I won't force you to stay. Quote. The two exchanged no more pleasantries. Abel was in a hurry to hand over his nephew to his brother to see what was wrong. So after speaking, he hurried into the house. Mr. Granger didn't care. When I got in the car, I drove towards my house. However, the mood is also much more comfortable. He knew that he was after Christmas. There will definitely be a lot of business. So he happily said to his daughter, Hermione, Dad always taught you to be helpful. Tell me, don't you want that encyclopedia? Quote. Mr. Granger had thought he would hear his daughter cheering. But the left and right waited did not wait, and couldn't help but look up in the rearview mirror. Seeing his daughter looking out the window and not responding, Mr. Granger couldn't help but shout a few more words. Hermione, Hermione, quote. What's wrong, Dad? Quote. I mean, don't you want that encyclopedia? Dad decided to buy it for you. As a reward for your helpfulness. Quote. Oh, thank you, Dad. After speaking, he began to stunt again. Mr. Granger smiled and shook his head. It's just that her daughter is a little depressed because she saw her little friend leaving. Hermione, on the other hand, is not what Mr. Granger thinks at the moment. It's that I feel a little messy in my heart. As Braun said, the force that bounced him off was absolutely impossible to explain with science. But if she really accepted the fact of magic, she was still a little difficult to accept. I secretly thought in my heart, if Braun can actually send an owl to my house tomorrow as he says, then I believe him. Quote. It's not a big deal, it's just a skin trauma and drinking this potion and burping twice. Mr. Foley looked at his son lying on the bed, took out a bottle of green potion from his arms and handed it over without hesitation. Braun pulled the stopper. The potion was poured into his mouth. And as the potion enters the body, Braun only felt that the area where he was in pain began to become a little numb. He knew it was a sign that the wound was beginning to heal. It's just that this idea just appeared not long ago. Hiccups began to come out of his mouth. And that's nothing. As the burp began to spit out bubbles. Is Cousin Braun all right? Pauline saw this magical scene and asked excitedly. Nothing, hiccup potion. Just drink it for a while. Specializes in the treatment of various traumatic injuries. Quote. Abel said with a nonchalant expression. He was a little panicked when he saw his nephew injured just now. I remembered when I entered the house. Isn't his eldest brother a wizard? He is also a wizard who can refine potions. So what else are you worried about? Dad, are the panda eyes on your face also missing by drinking this potion? How amazing. Quote. Abel is a little smug. Of course, otherwise, Daddy's panda. It seemed that he found that something was wrong, so he reprimanded embarrassedly. Ahem, don't ask too much, children. Quote. But the family atmosphere of Maine's house is very good. For her father's reprimand, Pauline was not afraid at all. Instead, he whispered, Humph, also say what adults talk about things. Definitely hiding in the house and drinking potions for fear that Cousin Braun and I will laugh at you when they see you spitting bubbles. Quote. Abel had no choice but to reprimand her lovely daughter as if she hadn't heard. Diverted topic. Braun, it's not your uncle, I said you, why are you so old and careless? Since he still fell, if it weren't for. Braun was lying on the bed spitting bubbles bored, and when he heard his uncle's words, he was obviously confused. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? It's not Braun's fault. At this moment, Pauline couldn't help it. It was my cousin who saw Hermione, Granger's uncle's daughter, running a red light and was almost hit by a car, and quickly pulled her. But that girl was suddenly so magically violent. Magic riot, Abel reminded, glaring at his father. Okay, magic riot, and then bounced Cousin Braun to the streetlight. Is it, son? Quote. Mr. Foley turned to look at his son. Braun nodded helplessly. Pauline has leaked to herself that it is not interesting to hide it. Yes, I think I'm okay with myself. I'm afraid Hermione will be scolded by her dad, so I bear it myself. But Uncle Abel, Hermione and his father really don't know about it. When he heard that I had fallen, he offered to send me back. Quote. Abel nodded. I see. But after hearing this, Mr. Foley looked a little interested and patted his son on the shoulder. Worthy of my son. At a young age, I knew that heroes save beauty. Have your daddy in my demeanor. I dare say that little witch must love you to death. Quote. Mr. Foley laughed at Braun immodestly. Then he began to talk about various heroes saving beauty in his youth. Is it, so you had a lot of girlfriends when you were younger? Quote. Of course. Hearing the voice, Mr. Foley replied subconsciously. But halfway through it felt something was wrong. The more you listen, the more familiar it becomes. Twist your head. I saw my wife standing behind me. The beautiful face is cloudy at the moment. Honey, you listen to me explain. In fact, I was bragging, really, I have only talked about one girlfriend of yours in my life, and I have always loved you deeply. Quote. Mrs. Foley ignored him. Instead, he sneered. Is it? Didn't you say you have a lot of girlfriends? Aren't you a hero saving beauty? Albert, I think you need to explain to me properly. Quote. Mr. Foley looked to his brother as if for help. Abel endured a smile and pretended to be serious. I don't know, maybe you talked about your girlfriend and didn't tell me. I remember that girl from the Parkinsons didn't like you very much. Quote. Mrs. Foley screamed. Yes, Albert, no wonder you're looking for a Parkinson's kid for Braun. It turns out that there is your old lover there. Quote. Stop fighting. Stop it, Millie. I am innocent. Abel wronged me. I didn't do it. Quote. Watch your brother being beaten. Abel laughed. No, sister-in-law, I'm joking. The girl in the Parkinson family was fat like a ball. I'm sure my brother won't like him. Quote. Really? Mrs. Foley was still a little unconvinced. This time Abel did not make it bad, a serious book. Of course, you still don't know my brother. Where did he dare to find a girlfriend who didn't even dare to talk to a girl? Honestly, not only me, but even my dad always thought that he would die alone. I didn't expect to meet you, I mean thanks to meeting you. Anyway, this is my brother's greatest luck. Quote. That's right, that's right. Abel was right, I blushed even when talking to girls. Quote. Mr. Foley hurriedly responded, although it is said that the matter is explained clearly. But Mrs. Foley is still a little dark-faced. Picking yourself up something that no one wants. At this moment, she finally understood the reason why her father-in-law laughed at her and her husband's wedding. Is that because my pigs finally found cabbage? The dinner was very generous. It's not just the Christmas specialties of England. Roast goose. That's right, roast goose. Turkey is eaten in beautiful countries. The traditional European Christmas delicacy is roast goose. The reason why he became a turkey in pretty country was because there were no geese but only turkeys in America. So the British colonists could only catch turkeys all over the mountains. The roast goose is stuffed with plenty of carrots, celery, onions, and chestnuts. The surface is coated with various spices. After baking in an oven, the surface becomes golden. It also emits a strong fragrance. Except for the main course, roast goose, the other food also looks delicious. There is just the right amount of smoked salmon that is fried with grease. A crispy suckling pig stuffed with apples in its mouth. Yellow gingerbread, Christmas pudding with a seductively milky scent. Eggnog, dried fruit cake, ... The long table was laid out without any gaps. How is Braun delicious? I don't know if it's to your liking. Quote. Joanna asked a little nervously. She wasn't very clear about Wizard's tastes. It tasted good, Aunt Joanna. I love it. Quote. That's good. Eat more. Quote. Joanna said with a smile. Braun and Pauline were quickly full. The adults were still there drinking mulled wine and talking. I have to say that this meal made Braun feel like a heat explosion. There is no vegetarian thing on the whole table. The only lighter gingerbread is baked in butter. But the taste is quite good. Cousin Braun, let's go to my room and watch TV. TV. He was also curious about what the TV shows of this period were. Didn't resist either, and was pulled to her room by Pauline. The room was not dressed in pink like the other girls. It's a very normal house style. The only trace that can tell that the room is where the girl lives is probably the pile of huge dolls on the bed. It didn't take long for Pauline to tune up the TV and the picture appeared on the TV. It's just that compared to Braun's previous life, the picture is still rough and almost smooth. However, the characters in the TV series are familiar to Braun. Mr. Bean. Watching the agents inside make all kinds of strange appearances couldn't help but make Braun smile. "Ah, it's so comfortable." Quote, after debugging the TV, Pauline threw herself on the bed like a kitten. I saw Braun still standing there. Hurriedly beckoned him to come and sit down. Braun hesitated. Although his body is only a 9-year-old child, his mind is very mature. This made him a little reluctant to sit on the bed with his cousin. Of course, this is not to say that he has any ideas. It's just that I feel awkward in my heart. "Come here, cousin." Quote. Seeing Braun standing motionless, Pauline jumped out of bed and pulled him over. "Let me introduce you to my good friend. This one is a hug bear. This one is the flower fairy. This," pointing to her doll, Pauline introduced Braun in a serious way. Braun had to pretend to be happy to greet the dolls. To be honest, Braun thought it was stupid. Talk to a bunch of cotton. It doesn't get much more stunning. 10 minutes later. "Run, our ship has been attacked, and the alien banshee is coming to get us." Corporal Braun and Corporal Hug Bear start the ship together. Quote. "Yes, Captain Pauline. Spaceship startup complete." Quote. "Great, we are free from the hunt of the alien banshee." Corporal Braun, "Let's start a new interstellar voyage." Quote. "Phew, okay Pauline, take a break. How about we watch TV? I'm a little tired." I sweated. Quote. Braun wiped the sweat from his forehead. That's right, he ended up being so fragrant. He and Pauline had a fun game together. He remembers the last time he played so hard, as if it was when he was a child in an orphanage with other children. "All right, I remember there was a cartoon screening today." Quote. Pauline is also sweaty playing. Jump out of bed and start turning the buttons on the TV to change stations. There weren't many TV shows at this time. Soon Pauline found the cartoon she was talking about. "Look, Braun, there is no such cartoon in the wizarding world of The Adventures of Tintin." Quote. Pauline asked more and more ostentatiously. Braun watched intently and nodded. "Yes, we generally read the Daily Prophet. The photo above is almost the same as the cartoon, but there is no sound. By the way, this one is for you." Quote. With that, Braun pulled a chocolate frog card out of his pocket. This is what he put in his clothes pocket yesterday. At this time, I thought about it and took it out. "What is this?" Pauline's eyes looked at the picture that Braun placed in the palm of her hand without blinking. The picture shows an old man with a white beard wearing glasses. Albus Dumbledore is currently the head of Hogwarts. Recognized as the greatest wizard of our time. Dumbledore's well-known contributions include: defeated the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945. Discover the 12 uses of dragon's blood. With partner Nick Flamel in alchemy. Fruitful. Professor Dumbledore loves chamber music. And 10-post wooden ball play. Quote. Looking at the text on the back of the card, Pauline couldn't help but read it. Reverse the card again and start looking closely at the characters on the picture. But before she could lean over, she saw the character on the card winking at her. Took Polly by surprise. Braun, he moved. I saw the card winking at me. Quote. Of course Pauline, I said they move. Look again, is there no one on the card? Pauline looked at the card in disbelief. Sure enough, the characters above disappeared. Only a blank box is left. Really, how amazing. Quote. A small card piques Pauline's interest in the wizarding world. Let her start pestering Braun to ask. Nothing, he just went to the door. He'll be back in a while. Quote. Braun looked into his cousin's bright eyes and couldn't bear to refuse. Braun, do all the characters stop by? Of course not. Just like ordinary people, the characters on the chocolate frog card have their own hobbies. Some like to visit the door and others like to stay there motionless. Others will suddenly come out to scare you. Quote, Polly giggled. It's interesting. What do you all play, Braun? Do you also play with toys? Quote, think of your own broom. Braun nodded hesitantly. Yes, we usually ride a broomstick. But I don't play much, and to be honest I'm a little afraid of heights. I usually read books and learn about potions at home. But I've heard that some young wizards play goblins at home. Quote, it's so cool. Is it the kind of broom that can fly on a ride? Quote, yes, but usually it's dangerous if it's not well controlled. But there are specific children's brooms. That one would be safe. Quote, I really can't wait to become a wizard. Then fly freely in the sky on a broomstick. Quote, Polly said excitedly while hugging her hugging bear. Pauline, bring your cousin Braun down. They're going home. Quote, okay, Mom. Pauline shouted downstairs first. Then his expression became a little disappointed. Although it is said that this cousin himself has only known each other for a few hours. But getting along made her feel very happy. And those magical and interesting magical world things made her even more addicted. Hey, have fun, Pauline. If you want me, we can write to me. Quote, Braun touched the little girl's head and comforted. He is a veteran of coaxing children. In his previous life, when he was in the orphanage, he did not take care of those younger siblings with other older children. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Pauline, who was still a little sad, to be coaxed into a smile by him. Turn off the TV and go downstairs with Pauline. The adults downstairs were already dressed. Let's go, Braun. Ask your uncle to take us to the train station. Then let's use the portkey to hurry home. The time requested by the Ministry of Magic is approaching. Quote, the crowd did not delay. Get in Abel's car and head to the train station. There are not many people on the road. Everyone is reunited with their loved ones at home. So the Foley family quickly arrived at the train station. Go back, Abel. Mr. Maine nodded, but still leaned against the window. Wait until you see the Foley family enter the train station. Only then got back into the car. Dad, I heard Braun say that there is some kind of flow powder. Just sprinkle the flow powder into the fireplace and read out where you want to go. Why don't they use flow powder that? Don't we also have a fireplace in our house? Quote, Pauline asked with some curiosity. Silly boy, flow powder is not for any fireplace. You must connect to the flow network. Otherwise, flow powder is of no use. Quote, to explain here, the use of flow powder must be when the fireplace is connected to the flow net. The Dursleys' fireplace works because the Ministry of Magic wants to protect the protagonist, Harry Potter. The use of the portkey also requires the approval of the Ministry of Magic. And the time must be determined when using. If it is an illegal door key, once caught, you may go to jail. Closing parenthesis. Mr. Maine explained while driving. That's how it is. Dad, you see, this was given to me by Cousin Braun. Quote, he said and showed the card in his hand with some ostentation. Chocolate frog cards. What a full of memories. I haven't seen it for a long time. Quote, Mr. Maine couldn't help but say with remembrance when he saw the card in his daughter's hand. The other side. The Foley family also returned to the castle. Back in the bedroom, Braun pulled out a copy of History of Wizards. It was an extracurricular book his dad bought him. The price is also not expensive and is very suitable as a Christmas gift. After wrapping the book in a few sheets of vellum, Braun hurried downstairs with his book in his arms. Son, what are you going to do? Dad, I would like to send Ronald Pauline some gifts. Quote, Mr. Foley was stunned for a moment. Oh, of course. You can go to the shack and have a look. Find a few owls. Quote, no thanks, I've already finished sending Braun for you. Mrs. Foley said lazily as she sat on the couch. You can tell from her flushed cheeks that she has drunk quite a bit of wine today. I have a friend. Braun stammered. He didn't expect his mother to finish giving gifts for him. And friends, who is it? Quote, Mrs. Foley wondered. His own son has basically no friends except for a few relatives. She usually stays at home and reads quietly, but at this time, a friend suddenly appeared and couldn't help but surprise her a little. I can see that my son doesn't want to say something. Mr. Foley hurriedly said, go Braun, it's late. If you don't go early, the owl may not be delivered in time. Quote, okay Dad, I'm going. After saying that, Bron hurried away. Hey, I don't know Bron's new friend yet. Quote, Mrs. Foley said with some dissatisfaction. Millie, Bron is already a big kid. We're going to give him some privacy. You don't want your son to stay at home all the time, do you? This kid is so shy. We're going to give him a little more time. Quote. Hearing this, Fleeves muttered a few words a little reluctantly. Bron passes through the castle's secluded corridors. It didn't take long to reach the shack that Mr. Foley was talking about. The shack is made of wood specifically for the owl's residence. However, although it is made of wood and seems to be leaking everywhere, it is not cold inside. A special magic is cast inside to ensure the temperature and humidity of the shack. Good evening, Master Bron, a house elf with particularly large ears said respectfully to Bron. Hello, Dobby. I wanted to find a strong owl to deliver the book and this letter for me. Quote. Oh, of course, young master. What do you think of Kama? He was very strong and docile. Quote. Dobby pointed to a huge gray-black owl. It seems that I have found that there is a live door. The owl, called Kama, cooed excitedly twice. Okay, let Kama send it. Bron first told Kama the name of the recipient. Then hand both the letter and the book to Dobby. Let him help tie it to Kama's body. He is professional for this job. It wasn't long before an owl with a letter tied to its paws behind him waved its wings and left. Is there anything else I can help you, Master Bron? Quote. No more, Dobby. Bron waved to leave. After hesitating, he turned around and said, Merry Christmas, Dobby. Hope you have a nice Christmas Eve. Quote. Dobby was moved to tears. Oh, of course, thank you very much, Master Bron. Quote. Stroll along the castle's path. Bron couldn't help but sigh a little. House elves are creatures that sometimes make people feel some compassion for them. But Bron also knows that it's impossible to change their personalities, and it will take generations to succeed. Of course, even if it succeeds, Bron will not do it. First of all, it is not in his interest. Secondly, as a beneficiary, he may not want to change the status of house elves in his heart. But a little nicer to them can still be done. Encourage from time to time and send some small favors. This is all a good idea. Not only can you gain their gratitude, but also their loyalty. He wouldn't scold these house elves like other pure-blood families. Otherwise, the result may be like Sirius Black, who was directly killed by Creature, the house elf of the Black family. House elves, as the closest servants in pure-blood families, know a lot of secrets. Wake up. As soon as Bron opened his eyes, he saw a variety of gifts being placed in his room. He wasn't surprised. From the memory of the original body, I know that every year will basically be like this. These were sent by the families and potions masters who were close friends with their family. If nothing else, it's basically books. Otherwise, where did all the books in his house full of bookshelves come from? And the most conspicuous of them are not those packages with fancy packaging of all kinds. It's two packages that look a little plain. A look at the sender. Ronald Weasley Ideographic Period. Quote. Let's look at another one. Ginny S. Weasley Ideographic Period. Quote. No wonder. Bron muttered. Open the package. Ronald's stuff is more ordinary. It's a set of wizard chess. And it's brand new. It seems that he gave him Garon, but he still kept some for himself. Not all taken away. Quote. A set of wizard chess is not very expensive, but it also requires a silver shiko. Usually Ronald gives chocolate frogs or something. Wizard chess is already a big gift. Ginny sent it interestingly. It is a set of greeting cards drawn by myself. The animals above will also move. But it looks a little ugly. But it is much more intentional to appear. Stuff all the books sent by other wizards behind the bookshelf. Bron began to unpack his parents' gifts again. His mother gave him a pendant with armor protection. And the father, oh, Merlin, it's a magic wand. Quote. Bron excitedly looked at the wand in the box that looked a little old. With the wand he could continue learning potions. And those spells can also be put on the agenda. Take out the black wand with some protrusions in the box. Eugadim Leviosa, as the mantra is pronounced. Bron only felt a wave of magic flow from his body to his wand and finally float the book in front of him. It's kind of obscure, but refining potions is enough. Quote. Bron muttered as he looked at the wand in his hand. He can't wait to learn now. How about son? Like my Christmas gift for you? Quote. Mr. Foley asked at the table while eating a sandwich. Yes, Dad, I love it. But the magic of this wand seems to be a little obscure. Quote. Mr. Foley shrugged. It's normal. After all, I got it from other means. 12 inches long, blackthorn plum wood, staff core is the toad's heart tendon. This is a wand just ordered by a wizard who has committed fraud. Before the other party could come and receive the goods, the other party went in. Quote. Toad's heart tendon. Can this also be used as a cane core? Doesn't the staff core only have dragon nerves, unicorns, and phoenix feathers? Quote. Braun asked with a slight surprise. It was the first time he had heard of wands with such a core. Of course not, my children. There are many core materials for magic wands. The beard of a cat and the hair of a mermaid. As long as you can think of it, there is nothing that can't be made a magic wand. And the ones you mentioned are the 3 wand cores that were determined after Garrick Ollivander took over the wand shop. However, he also offended many wizards at that time. Quote. Braun first suddenly and then with some curiosity asked. That's how it is. So why is it that the wizarding world now goes to Ollivander's wand shop to buy wands? Didn't you say that he was resisted by a lot of wizards at that time? Quote. Mr. Foley takes a bite of his sandwich. Of course it's because it's strong. Although at first everyone completely resisted this wand-making method, which can be said to be inhumane. But soon people discovered this fact. Ollivander's wand is better than any other wand maker makes. And wizards are all in pursuit of power. If you can find a wand that suits you best, what wizard will refuse that? Quote. So those tests of arm length and height are not useless? Of course not. The reason why wizards who buy wands should measure the user's arm length, forearm length, height, head circumference, etc., is to choose the wand according to these parameters. Each wand is different because they use different unicorn hair, phoenix tail feathers, and dragon nerves as wand cores, which are powerful magical items. Ollivander believes that the best wand should contain a wand core with powerful magic powers. The wand wood is made of carefully selected materials that complement the characteristics of the wand core, and the wand chooses the wizard that is most attractive to it. This is also the reason why he often chooses a wizard with a wand. Quote. Dad, how do you know so much? That's because your grandfather and Ollivander know each other very well. Stinky boy, if you can read the Foley family history that I put on your bookshelf, I think you should know this kind of thing. Quote. Braun was embarrassed to take a sip of milk to hide his embarrassment. He can't be blamed for this. Who made that family history so thick? Basically write about the life experiences of each generation of family members. The boring made him too lazy to even turn it. Seeing his son's appearance, Mr. Foley also understood that it was because the book was too thick. Sighed. Well, since it's about Ollivander today, then let's talk about the origin of our family and the Ollivander family. Do you know where our family originated? Quote. Braun has flipped through a few pages of his family history. Without hesitation, he said, Mediterranean. Our ancestors came to England with the Romans and began to set up stalls here to sell homemade potions to native Englishmen. Quote. Mr. Foley nodded in satisfaction. That's right. Our ancestors started out as just crappy potions masters. But even this has a superb potion skill that surpasses that of the native English. The Ollivander family is similar to us. The same is true. Quote. Braun muttered. Ollivander, the man with the olive wood wand. Olive wood is also produced in the Mediterranean region. So their family also came to England with the Romans. Quote. That's right, the one with the olive wood wand. It seems that you are not so stupid yet. And the botanical illustrated book is also well memorized. Their ancestors also migrated to England from Mediterranean countries, and here they set up stalls which later developed into shops, selling wands to British wizards who at the time could only use poorly crafted wands. And that place is in what is now Diagon Alley. The stalls of our ancestors were also there. It's just that we don't operate directly now. Quote. Speaking of this, Mr. Foley couldn't help but sigh again. It's a pity. What a pity, Dad, Braun said with doubt. Syllable. Mr. Foley saw his silly son's gaze and slapped him on the head. Eat your food, adults and children don't ask more. Braun was beaten. I couldn't help but feel a little aggrieved. It's obviously what you have to tell me, and don't say it halfway. I ask you, you even beat me. With grievances, Braun finished his breakfast. Jungbin vented his emotions on the refining of potions. I have to say that he can't wait at this moment. Just as Braun prepares to start the day's experiments, Hermione, far away in the city of London, has not woken up yet. Bang, bang, quote. Regular knocks from the window woke Hermione on the bed. Rubbed his messy hair. Hermione set her sights on the window. I saw a huge gray-black owl staring at her. Signaled her to quickly open the window so as not to freeze Uncle Comma. At this moment, Hermione was shocked. Oh, my God, is what Braun said true? It turns out that there is really magic. Owls really deliver letters, quote. Last night because of Braun's words, she tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. There is both skepticism and anticipation. Until she actually saw it. Bang, bang, quote. Look at the sluggish wizard cub in front of him. Comma tapped on the window again with a slight dissatisfaction. At this moment, Hermione also saw the owl's dissatisfaction. Quickly help it open the window. Coo, Comma first shook the snow on his body. Then extend your leg towards Hermione. Hermione stretched out her hand a little nervously. After discovering that the owl did not attack her. Relieved. Mr. Owl, I'm going to take off your package, don't bite me. Hermione said cautiously. Karma looked at the wizard cub in front of him with disdain. Then turned his back to her. Hermione removed the package from Karma's body. Then unfolded the letter with some excitement. Shin did not enter the water because it was protected by magic. I saw that the envelope said, collected by Miss Hermione from the second-floor bedroom of Granger's house, 16 King's Avenue, City of London. Oh my God, it's amazing, quote. Hermione was amazed by the recipient's address on the envelope. She was also afraid that because she didn't tell Braun's address, the owl would not find it then. I didn't expect to not only find it, but also know my address accurately. Open the envelope. Hermione began to read. Hello dear Hermione. Literally, as you can see, magic exists. And you may also receive the letter in June of this year. Join me on the train to Hogwarts to learn magic. In order to give you a better understanding of the wizarding world, I have prepared a book for you as a Christmas present that I hope you will enjoy. If you have any questions, you can write and ask Comma, that beautiful big owl, to bring it back, and I will get back to you as soon as I see it. And please prepare some nuts and bacon for it. It loves to eat these. Finally, I wish you a nice Christmas. Dear Braun Foley, quote. Oh my God, Braun is so caring. A book to learn about the wizarding world. It's so much to my heart. Quote. Putting down the letter, Hermione began to unpack the package with some excitement. A book with a black cover and gold font was revealed before her eyes. History of Wizards. I feel like this book is so thick. Quote. I didn't wait for Hermione to take a closer look. The owl began to bark again. Coo, cuckoo, quote. Are you hungry? Coo, wait, I'll go get you food. With that, he tiptoed downstairs in his pajamas. Hermione, what are you going to do, my dear? Quote. A gentle female voice asked with some doubt. Well, Mom, I'm a little hungry and want to eat something. Do you still have nuts and bacon at home? Quote. Of course, there were quite a few nut cakes and bacon sandwiches left over yesterday. But, yes, I know, brush your teeth before eating. And sweets are not good for teeth. I just want to get to the room first. You know, I ate too little last night and am a little hungry now. Quote. Okay, but you have to promise your mother not to forget to brush your teeth. Touched his daughter's head, Mrs. Granger said softly. Of course, Mom, I will. Seeing his mother leave, Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. Pulled out the nutcakes and sandwiches left over from last night from the fridge downstairs. Then he hurried back into the house. Wait for a hurry, Hermione said as she plucked the nuts from the nutcake and placed them in front of Karma. Open the sandwich again. Take the bacon out. You eat slowly. I went to brush my teeth. But don't go yet. I'll write to Braun in a moment. Quote. Wave to Comma. After getting a reply, Hermione hurried downstairs to wash up. Good morning, sweetheart. Quote. Good morning, Dad. Why are you so happy today? Mr. Granger asked with interest. Nothing. I had a friend who gave me a Christmas present. I'm done brushing my dad and I'll see you later. Quote. Friends. Does my daughter have a new friend? Quote. Mr. Granger couldn't help but think. But his own daughter knows it herself. I never had any friends at school. If it weren't for the fact that I was a classmate with the school teacher. He was even afraid that his daughters would be bullied at school. Wash up. Hermione hurried upstairs. Didn't you eat breakfast? I'm eating in the bedroom. Mr. Granger looked at his daughter and shook his head helplessly. Back in the bedroom, Hermione saw Karma still eating nuts deliciously. I couldn't help but feel a little hungry. Grab a pen and paper. Writing a letter to Braun while eating a nutcake without nuts. And bacon sandwiches without bacon. Hello, dear Braun. I am very happy with the Christmas present you gave me. I was also amazed by the magic. ... Finally, I hope your body recovers as soon as possible. Your Hermione. Quote. After writing the letter, Hermione thought about it and didn't know what to give as a gift. After all, she didn't know exactly what wizards liked. After thinking about it, she finally found a plain golden pen from her drawer. She bought it while she was traveling with her parents in France. Just as Braun gave her a book, she gave her a pen in return. The pen was wrapped tightly and carefully tied to Karma's body. Karma is concerned with eating nuts. Wait until Hermione ties everything on it. Its nuts are also eaten. Combed his own feathers with his mouth. Then, without waiting for Hermione to speak, he cleverly opened the window with his paws and disappeared. What a smart owl. ... Scabies potion. Slugs with antennae, porcupine thorns, snake teeth. It is a potion for the treatment of sorcerer's scabies. The only downside to the strong effect and no side effects is that it tastes bad. First, 6 parts of snake teeth are put into a mortar and ground to grind. Quote. Braun recited as he placed the prepared snake teeth into a glass mortar and began to grind them. It took almost 10 minutes for the snake teeth to be ground into fine bone meal. Then divide the snake teeth into 4 parts and pour them into the crucible. The note for this place is to pour a copy every 10 seconds. Quote. Heat for 5 minutes. Wave your wand and wait for the snake tooth powder inside the crucible to turn yellowish. Quote. Put 4 slugs, 2 porcupine spines into the crucible. Stir clockwise with a tin bar for 5 turns. Wait for the ingredients in the potion to mix well and glow with a pale green shimmer. Quote. Seeing that the material in the crucible has finally changed, Braun suppressed the joy in his heart. Silently meditate in your heart. Wave your wand and you're done. With the wave of Braun's wand, the potion began to change magically. A pale green smoke also began to appear on the crucible. This represents the success of the pharmacy. See the potion succeed. Braun did not delay. Quickly wave his wand to extinguish the flames under the crucible. Then silently wait for the agent inside the crucible to cool slowly. After trying it with a tin rod and finding that the potion was a little sticky, he nodded. Pour it into a specially made vial of medicine. Plug the cork. The potion was a success. Very good, Braun. But you also forget the most important step. Quote. Mr. Foley said solemnly as he stood across from Braun. What is Daddy? He was sure that his steps were not a single mistake and he followed the steps in the book. Without answering, Mr. Foley took a closer look at Braun's potion. Then I pulled off the lid and sniffed. You forgot to taste, Braun. The first potion after a potion's master refines it is often tasted by himself to make sure there is no problem with the potion. Say goodbye and drink the potion in one go. Phew, it's still that taste. The smell of pigs is still slippery. Not bad, son, though. The quality of the elixir is good. If you take it and sell it, you will need at least 20 copper nats. Quote. So expensive. Won't 2 bottles go back to the original? Quote. Braun was surprised. As the simplest novice elixir, acne elixir, the price is not high. The cost is even lower and pitiful. The only more expensive one is snake teeth. 6 pairs cost almost 15 copper nits. The other 2 add up to only 20 copper nits. This adds up to only 35 copper nats, which is 1 silver and 4 copper nats. There are 5 bottles in this pot. Subtract the cost and net earn 2 silvers eco. The only downside is that the potion takes longer. At least half an hour. Otherwise, why do you think Potions Master is popular? Okay, don't talk about it and move on to production. Today your mission is to make 100 bottles of acne potions. Come on, lad. After speaking, he left with a smile. Quote. 100 bottles. Follow a pot of 5 bottles for half an hour at a time. Wouldn't I have to practice for 10 hours? No, I have to spend 11 hours to clean up. Quote. In his heart, he cursed his father for being jovial, and kept cleaning up his hands for a moment. The crucible and other utensils after refining the potion must be cleaned up in time. One of the reasons for this is to not affect the efficacy of the new potion. Another is the fear of corrosion of the crucible. Reduces the life of the crucible. Bron spent the rest of the day. Even the meals were rushed in the potions lab. But even so, Bron was not able to refine 100 bottles of potions until late at night. As the last potion was refined, Bron finally let out a breath. Rubbed his somewhat swollen head. Clean up all the refining equipment. Only then did he drag his tired body to the room. I slept without even taking off my clothes. It didn't take long for a burst of snoring. Did Bron sleep? Millie asked her husband beside her. Mr. Foley was looking at his watch casually while looking at his book. Almost 100 bottles should be done by this time. This potion is simple and there will be no problems. And the further you refine, the more handy it will be as you improve your proficiency. Quote. Bron is only 9 years old. Do you think there will be no problem with allowing him to make potions for so long every day? Millie Foley asked with some concern. It is not a good thing for a young wizard to overdraw his magic for a long time. The mana consumed by potions refining is low and will not affect Bron in any way. And Millie, Bron is also my son and I feel sorry for him too, but you have to know that the wizarding world is not a gentle place. Before there is Grindelwald and after there is the mysterious man. What will come later? These are difficult for anyone to predict. As long as the wizard's secrecy law is not lifted for a day. Then the dogfight between pure blood and half-blood will never stop. But isn't there Dumbledore today? And many pure blood families have disappeared. Representative Foley shook his head. Millie, Dumbledore is too old. He was even older than my father and was of my grandfather's generation. If it weren't for his powerful magic support, his old body would have long been unable to withstand it. And who can guarantee that he doesn't have any secret wounds in the 2 conquests of the Dark Lord? As for the disappearance of pure blood families, Millie, pure blood is to destroy the unclean. He has never been the purity of blood but a philosophy. As long as the arrogance that wizards thought they were superior to muggles did not disappear, then pure blood would never be wiped out. And arrogance is often the most common emotion of wizards. You know, my personal talent for potions is mediocre and I can never become a true potions master. But Bron is different, he's smart and has a lot of magic. He is a piece of jade, and only by carving it well can it bloom. The potions master may just be his starting point, and I even think he can refine that is comparable to the Philosopher's Stone. Albert, okay, I confess that I was in a bit of a hurry. Quote. The frenzy in Mr. Foley's eyes dissipated. It seems that I am indeed in a hurry. I'll let Bron continue to learn potions in the future. But I'll reduce the number to half. Don't worry, I won't tire him. Quote. The lights go out. Mr. Foley looked up at the misty sky outside the window. I couldn't help but secretly say in my heart, Father, your wishes and those of your ancestors may be fulfilled in Bron. ... Over the next few days, Mr. Foley did reduce Bron's potions to half. Bron isn't quite sure what Mr. Foley is thinking. But he's happy to be able to take it easy. Similarly, he began to use his free time to start learning spells. I have to say that the golden talent is indeed powerful, although it has nightmare side effects, but it is terrible for their own increase. A first-grade elementary spell book allowed him to learn 7788 in a month. Although it is said that it is impossible to cast spells without a wand, as long as the wand is in hand, it can basically be successfully cast. He didn't even need to recite some small spells like fire spells. Next, add a unicorn horn and put it in the crucible. Stir clockwise for 2 circles and heat for 10 minutes to allow the unicorn horns to merge with the powder. And then, add 2 servings of maple parasitic berries. Stir twice counterclockwise. Quote. Then Bron pulled out his wand and saw the color of the potion begin to change from red to silver. Without delay, he waved his wand. The color change of the potion eventually turned completely silvery white. Taste. Representative Foley handed Bron the potion already in the bottle. Bron swallowed. With a little fear. It was true that he had drunk too many different potions during this time. The taste is hard to say. It made him really afraid of these potions. But like Mr. Foley said, as a potions master, if he didn't even drink it himself, how could he dare to give it to a sick person? Gritting his teeth, he drank the potion in his hand. But the taste is not bitter. On the contrary, it has some freshness of grass and trees. This made Bron, who had been devastated during this time, stunned. After the taste, Bron felt a sense of pleasure from his body. It was as if I had been immersed in warm water. Comfortable and warm. After a long time, he opened his eyes unexpectedly. It tastes good. As soon as Bron opened his eyes, he saw Mr. Foley ask with a smile. Yes, I feel comfortable. The potion also carries some freshness of grass and trees. Quote, that's the taste of a broad-spectrum antidote. Always made to feel comfortable. Do you know why? Quote, is it because of unicorn horns? Bron hesitated. Mr. Foley first nodded and then shook his head. Half right, unicorns, as pure creatures, are indeed able to remove the effects of negative magic. But it's not just because of it. Remember the formula for the broad-spectrum antidote. Quote, Bezoar, mistletoe berries and unicorn horns. Is the freshness of the grass and trees because of the life breath of berries, the damage to the body caused by the removal of Bezoar, and the negative effects of unicorn horns to drive away the soul? Mr. Foley nodded approvingly. This is the principle of many antidotes, the Trinity. With the exception of some proprietary antidotes, most antidotes basically follow the principle of body, soul, and life force. Quote, if you can create your own antidote in the future, you must remember this principle that will save you a lot of time. Bron nodded seriously. Okay, let's finish refining 2 more pots. The rest of the time continues to refine herbicides. Quote, isn't the broad-spectrum antidote refined? Mr. Foley gave him an angry look. You think the unicorn's horns were blown by the wind? Does the kid know how much this potion you drink costs for? Quote, how much? Bron asked curiously. 10 gold galleons. And do you know how much this unicorn horn costs? Quote, without waiting for Bron to answer, Mr. Foley continued. 40 gold galleons and priceless. So, isn't it all back to the original? Looking at the 3 bottles of potion left in front of him, Bron asked. Yes, refining a bottle is a loss, a bad one can't be sold, and it's easy to lose money. So there are fewer and fewer refinings. Potions like this are basically subsidized by the Ministry of Magic itself or by entrusting other potions masters to give them per bottle. The people who use it are basically Aurors. It is enough for ordinary wizards to use universal antidotes. Quote, if it weren't for making you more aware of potions. I don't waste material that. Okay. Hurry up and refine the potion. Now that the weather is getting warmer again, herbicides are becoming more and more popular. Stock up on more just in case. Quote, herbicide again. I hate this kind of stuff the most. Quote, Bron complained as he prepared the materials. The materials are ready for refining. Bron couldn't help but move smartly. If I'm not mistaken, there seems to be a potion recipe related to grass in the first talent. Seems to be more effective in elimination. Wait, let me think. Quote, sitting on the bench, Bron looked at the memories of his first talent. Although it has been so long, this memory is still clear, as if it is deeply rooted in my mind. Found it. Bron with some joy. I remember a young man writing on his notes. XX day, sunny. Finally, 2 years after I stepped into the wizarding world, I finally created a potion of my own. The next thing I need is to experiment with this recipe. Then go to the library to redeem the merits. Work hard XX and you will surely be able to become a great wizard. Quote, that's right, this is Bron's first simulation, the potion that the protagonist configured before being assassinated by his brother. The potion that delayed him for 2 years was entirely made by him himself from start to finish in his free time. Unfortunately, before he could conduct the experiment, he was cursed to death by his senior brother. The last time Bron checked his memory, he didn't pay much attention. But seeing the herbicide at this moment can't help but think of this memory again. Let me look at these recipes. Solitary grass, dried nettle, puffer fish, 3-part mouse tail. It feels a little difficult compared to other potions. Quote, although I thought about it like this, my hand did not stop. Start by grinding dried nettle and puffer fish eyes into powder. Then pour into the already heated crucible. Then wait until the powder begins to turn black and pour a pint of pure water. Wait until the liquid inside the pan turns black. Bronn put on dragonskin gloves and threw the solitary grass in. Then a long stirring begins. It wasn't until Bronn's arms began to sour that the potions inside the crucible finally became sticky. That's when Bronn started putting in a mouse tail every 10 minutes. And the magic is as the rat's tail is put into the crucible. The potion in the crucible also became clear from viscous. Is this going to succeed? Doesn't it seem that there is anything difficult? Quote. Bronn smiled. I don't think this potion is that difficult. But the smile had only just appeared. Then I heard a shrill hissing sound from inside the crucible. Bronn's face changed and he quickly turned off the flames. But even the medicine in the crucible still became a little boiling and splashed out a lot. But fortunately, Bronn was far away and didn't get splashed. However, his face still looked a little ugly after seeing the contaminated potion materials. Failed, quote, Bronn said with an ugly face. Could it be that there is a problem with the recipe? Bronn thought as he cleaned up the contaminated material. I don't pay attention and feel a pain in my fingers. When I looked down, I saw that the grass seeds soaked in the potion had changed, not only growing rapidly, but also becoming thicker and not like grass but like vines. And when Bronn's fingers reach over, he even swings the vine to twitch. However, the vine did not survive for long, perhaps because the soil did not grow or perhaps because the potion was not completed so the effect was not enough, and it didn't take long for these alienated plants to die. Look at the corpses of these alienated plants. A smile appeared at the corner of Bronn's mouth. Interesting, I didn't expect to make this strange medicine instead of making a herbicide. Although it is said that the experiment failed. But these things are still worth studying. Maybe I can actually create a whole new potion. Quote. Knock knock. Master Bronn, can Dobby come in? Wait a minute, I'll finish the potions. Dobby's knock outside the door made Bronn speed up to put the alienated plants away. After tidying up his clothes, he said, Come in, Dobby. Dobby, with big ears, respectfully walked in. Is there something? Letter, Master Bronn. A letter sent to you in a package. They were all brought back by comma. Quote. Bronn took the letter from Dobby. This was sent to him by Hermione. The content of the letter is also to wish him good health and express his longing for the wizarding world. To his surprise, he didn't expect to receive a package. Pen, it looks beautiful. Unfortunately, it can only be used as a collector's item. Why don't you go back and ask Dad if he can transform it into an alchemical item? Quote. Bronn muttered as he looked at the pen in his hand. Since the crossing, he has written with a quill pen. It's not that I didn't think about using a fountain pen. It's just that the quill consumes less mana when using magic control records. And the pen is somewhat difficult to use. But since Hermione gave him a fountain pen, he couldn't just keep it as a decoration. Maybe you can try to get your father to find an alchemist to transform it. Maybe there will be more interesting effects. Chapter 61. Let Dobby go down later. Bronn began refining today's potion again. Wait until it's almost noon. Before stopping, get ready to go downstairs for dinner. I'll talk to my dad later. The practice of brain closure should be put on the agenda, otherwise there will be no time for January now. There are still 8 months until the start of school. During this time, I also studied the formula of this alienated plant. It's too late before school starts without speeding up. But in this case, the second grade spell cannot be practiced. Quote. After hesitating, Bronn decided to put the spell on it first and prioritize the study of alienation potions. In the first grade, there was not much crisis, and it was all a threesome crisis. Even if he was assigned to Gryffindor, it would not hurt him. And the first grade spell should be enough to deal with some crises. Lunchtime. After eating the lunch carefully prepared by the house elf, Bronn did not go upstairs immediately but sat quietly in his seat and began to wait for his father to finish eating. What's the matter, Bronn? Mr. Foley asked, looking at Bronn, who was still sitting at the dining table. Usually Bronn finished eating, but hurried upstairs. Yes, Dad, I have something I want to ask for your help. Missing pocket money. I'll wait for you to wait for the night. Bronn shook his head. No, I'm actually looking for a teacher. So I need your help. Quote. Teacher. What teacher? Spells. Quote. Brain closure. Bronn spat out slowly. Mr. Foley was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect his son to want to learn brain closure. But he habitually didn't ask much. It is to give the son the greatest initiative. Yes, I will find a good brain closure wizard for you. But that doesn't affect your potions learning. Quote, no problem, father, that. I went upstairs. Quote, go ahead. I will find it for you as soon as possible. He'll teach you until next week. Quote, Braun walked to the potions lab with doubt. He also made a point of making excuses, ready to answer when Mr. Foley asked him. But I didn't expect that. I hadn't said that yet. Mr. Foley agreed. This made him a little scratching his head. But thinking of what he had done before, Mr. Foley didn't bother with the question anymore without asking. Instead, he continued his own potions business. The 142nd experiment. Experimental result. Failed. The increased vitality of the experimental body is speculated to be the reason for the success of the complete refining of soil and medicine. However, it is still difficult to control and will indiscriminately attack the creatures within range. Survival time has increased. Solve the problem first. Control of alienated plants. Quote, put down the experimental record in your hand. Braun couldn't help but rub his brows. He conducted hundreds of experiments this week. At the same time, try to experiment with some creatures such as mice. But alienating agents were found to be effective only on plants. And no matter what kind of plant is sprinkled, will turn into thick and spiky vines. Then attack like crazy and indiscriminately. Most of the problems have been solved, and the only problem is to solve the problem of plant control. He tried to reduce the weight of solitary grass, although it made the plant a lot more docile, but lost that powerful attack. It's really not possible, just join your own blood and give it a try. Braun said fiercely in his heart. After a while, wait until the plant dies again. Braun didn't recycle it. Instead, a bottle of alienation was poured again. I saw that the dead plants were miraculously slowly fluoridating and softening. Becomes a liquid and disappears into the soil. In the same place, a grass seed the size of a quail's egg appeared. The color is also no longer pale green but becomes dark green. This is another of his discoveries in these experiments. Watering the alienation agent again after the plant dies results in a grass seed. And this grass seed will grow into a plant again after being catalyzed by the alienation agent, and the strength will become stronger. The only drawback is that the plants that have been repeatedly catalyzed repeatedly survive for a shorter time and require larger and larger doses of drugs to induce growth. Braun, come down, the teacher your dad found for you is here. Quote, Mrs. Foley's voice came from outside. Braun hurriedly put the things away. Hide, then hurry downstairs. As soon as he came downstairs, he saw his parents talking to a middle-aged man with greasy hair. The middle-aged man did not smile, but nodded in agreement from time to time. When Mr. Foley saw Braun, he called him forward. Introduced to middle-aged people. Severus, this is my son. Braun Foley. It's time to start school this year. And if nothing else, he should get slithery like all of Foley. Quote. The man nodded. Mr. Foley, who knows his character, does not care either. Let's start the introduction. Braun, this is your teacher during this time, Snape. He is the youngest head of Hogwarts. Inviting him over cost Dad a lot. Quote. Braun saw the oil-headed man in front of him and said respectfully. Hello, Professor Snape. This time will trouble you. Quote. Snape was a little surprised. You know me. Of course, I read a lot about Hogwarts until you were not only Slytherin's youngest headmaster but also an excellent potions master. It is a privilege for you to teach me personally. Quote. After a horse's ass, even Snape, who is not smiling, is smiling at the corner of his mouth at the moment. Apparently he is in a good mood at the moment. And Mr. Foley looked at his son with some surprise, obviously not expecting him to have such a skill. Braun, take Mr. Snape to the potions room. There's a bit more space there. Quote. Okay, Professor Snape, please come in. Snape walked into the potions room. Looking at the various tools and neatly arranged potions, I couldn't help but nod. You refined these. Snape picks up a bottle of scabies potions. Yes, not bad, good condition. You are very talented. Okay, let's start today's study. Quote. After a compliment, Snape stopped saying anything more and got down to business. Listen to your father that you want to learn *** brain sealing surgery. Can you tell me why? Quote, I'm afraid someone will look at my thoughts. Ron said bluntly. While Snape is a master of brain closure, he is also very good at mind saving. It's nice to have a good heart. Then let's start teaching. First of all, do you understand brain occlusion? Quote, I've read some books that say that practicing *** brain sealing requires emptying the brain and not thinking about anything. That's right, this is indeed the most basic form of brain closure without thinking, not recalling, not feeling, so as to prevent the master of mind from feeling his emotions and thoughts. The more advanced brain occlusion technique only seals one's specific thoughts, emotions and memories, thus creating an impeccable illusion for the master of dementoring. And to practice him, you first need to have resistance to dementoring. You ready? Brawn ideographic period. I'm going to get into your brain, we're going to see your resistance. Of course, sir. Now, get ready. Dementor. Quote. With Brawn's permission, Snape waved her wand to shoot a white and transparent beam of light into Brawn's head. Because of the preparation, Brawn only felt as if something had entered his brain and was ready to look through his thoughts. He resisted with all his might, but he was as weak as a baby. However, the light did not stay, and after finding Brawn powerless to resist, it left Brawn's mind. A little weak, Brawn. It seems that you have to work harder to resist the dementoring. Quote. Snape wasn't surprised. A wizard's spiritual power becomes stronger with age. It was rare that a young wizard could hold out for so long under his deeds. Yes, sir, Brawn gasped. The resistance just now was even more tiring for him than refining potions. If he hadn't already finished the potion that should have been refined today, he would even worry that he didn't have the energy to continue refining potions. Next, I'll tell you a little bit about the dementoring. These things can help you better understand brain closure. First of all, just like the master of brain closure, wizards who are proficient in dementoring are often called dementoring masters. These dementors are often able to penetrate each other's thoughts through eye contact. In some cases, however, it is easier to use the dementor spell directly. If the target is not using cerebral occlusion, then the master of the mind can understand whether the other person is lying by prying into the other person's mind, and study their thoughts, emotions, and memories. It even says to affect the memory of the invader. The only resistance to dementoring is cerebral occlusion. And if you want to practice *** brain closure, you must first empty your brain, Brawn. You can try it. It's like I said, don't think, don't remember, don't feel. Imagine yourself as a lifeless stone. Quote. Brawn wanted to close his eyes, but was stopped by Snape. Look at me, Brawn. Look at my eyes and don't close them, or you'll never learn brain closure. Quote. Brawn obediently did so, but he felt it was too difficult. There were always some chaotic thoughts in his mind that harassed him. Let him can't help but think of something. Don't think about anything. Are you thinking of a little girl? Forget these thoughts. Quote. Potions. Although you have refined well, this is not potions time. Quote. I told you to leave your feelings behind. Proud, emotional fools, who do not control their feelings, indulge in sad memories. Let yourself be stimulated so easily, they can't control themselves, such people have no resistance to the dementor. Quote. Snape babbles and admonishes as she pierces Brawn's thoughts. The teaching lasted almost 2 hours before it ended. By the end, not only was Brawn feeling tired, but Snape wasn't much better. As a superb magic, the magic consumption of dementors is not small for wizards. Not to mention the uninterrupted use of Snape. Well, that's it for today's teaching. I'll continue tomorrow. Quote. I feel like I can still hold on. Snape frowned and reprimanded. It's not a good habit to be strong. Good wizards know how to recognize themselves better. See you tomorrow, Brawn, and hopefully you'll last longer than you do today. Quote. Yes, I mean I will. Brawn replied. Downstairs. Mr. Foley, who had just entered the door, happened to meet Snape, who was coming downstairs. Severus, finished today's lesson? Quote. Snape nodded and said rarely. He needs to train a lot and today's lecture has reached his limit. I'll come back tomorrow. Quote. Is it? Would you like to have a meal together? I just got a batch of dragon meat from Romania and tasted very good. Quote. No need, I still have business. Walking to the door, Snape hesitated and said. The potion your son has refined is very good. He's very talented. Quote. After that, it doesn't matter what Mr. Foley wants to say more. After leaving the place where the castle was shrouded in magic, the phantom moved away. But Mr. Foley's eyes lit up. Apparently took Snape's words to heart. At dinner, I looked at my son's somewhat pale little face. Mrs. Foley cares. It's all right, Braun. If we find it difficult, we cannot learn it first. Quote. Braun shook his head and swallowed the dragon meat in his mouth. No, Mom, I want to learn. I think brain occlusion is very important to protect my brain. Quote. But, Mr. Foley said with a sting. Don't worry, Severus is measured not to hurt your precious son. As far as you know. Mr. Foley was unconcerned about his wife's anger and said excitedly. Did you know, Millie, Severus said Braun has a talent for potions. Yes, Mrs. Foley was also covering her mouth with a look of surprise at the moment. And then I couldn't help but rejoice like Mr. Foley. Severus Snape idiographic period. However, he has been a very famous potions master in England in recent years. And becoming the abbot of Hogwarts at a young age is even more extraordinary. Being able to get his praise made Millie more and more proud of her son. Of course, he said it himself. Mom and Dad, I'm full. Go, go, tinkering with that potion of yours goes. Tell me if you need any money. Quote, Braun's tinkering with alienation potions certainly couldn't be hidden from Mr. Foley. Otherwise, where did all those materials come from? His little coffers could not afford such profligacy. It's just that Mr. Foley doesn't care too much about his son's research. What kind of potion can a young wizard who hasn't gone to school develop? So don't ask after giving some help. But after receiving Snape's praise today, he decided to step up his support for his son's research. As long as it is necessary and reasonable, he will do his best to meet it. As a tribute to his son's spirit of study. Thank you, Dad. I'm sure my research won't disappoint you. Quote. After speaking, he left excitedly. It is certainly good that Mr. Foley can help him financially. This way he doesn't have to buckle the buckle when experimenting. You can let go of your hands and feet to study. I just went upstairs and didn't start researching. Braun found the letter on the table. Braun knew it was Hermione who wrote it. During this time, the two basically communicated every day or two. Although they haven't seen each other much, they have become familiar with each other a lot. From time to time, Hermione also started complaining to him about things in school. All Braun can do is keep comforting. Play the role of a bosom big brother. Although they are about the same age. Dear Braun, I have to say, your method has helped me so much. Now Laura and I don't argue like we used to. ... I also finished reading the book you gave me. After learning about the history of wizards. I can't wait to get into the world of magic as soon as possible. If you can, please tell me about your situation. And please reply quickly, every time you reply is a little too long. Your friend Hermione. Quote, Braun put down the letter. Grab your own quill pen. Dear Hermione, your dear friend Braun. Then he instructed Dom to send it tomorrow. By the way, bring some chocolate frog or something like that. Hesitated, picked up another bottle of acne drops and asked Dom to send it along with candy after writing a note. After that, he took out the crucible and began to try to add blood to continue refining the alienation potion. The previous steps are still the same. Dried nettle and puffer fish eyes are ground into powder. Pour into an already heated crucible. Then wait until the powder begins to turn black and pour a pint of pure water. Wait until the liquid inside the pan turns black. Braun put on dragonskin gloves and threw the solitary grass in. Then a long stirring begins. Add the mouse tail after sticky. Braun, who has many experiences, turned off the flames before this step. Gritted his teeth, after slashing his own finger with his wand and squeezing down a drop of blood. Then he began to wait nervously. Oh, with a soft sound. Braun let out a long breath. He did it, although I don't know how it works. But his own blood did not react with the potion. It's a successful convergence. The next thing he had to do was to test whether the potion worked. Take out a new grass seed and put it in the incubator. Pour a bottle of freshly baked alienation potion into it. Then wait quietly. Soon, the grass seed quickly broke through its shell and grew into a strange vine like his predecessors. The tentacles of the vines crackled the glass. There is a change in color. And seems to have more connections. Braun muttered with a frown. He could clearly feel that there seemed to be a fragile and chaotic consciousness in his mind. Stop. Try to give an order to the consciousness in your head. With the giving of the order, the vines in the incubator suddenly stiffened and stood motionless. But it didn't take long to recover again. Braun threw the mice in the cage into the incubator. Before he could give the order, he saw the vines suddenly attack and kill him. Attack power has gone up. Interesting. Does blood affect the attack power of plants? It's worth looking into. Standing outside the incubator and looking at the alienated vines feeding mice, Braun wrote in the experimental record. Originally, he wanted to continue to give instructions, but at this time, the vines that were eating suddenly began to age and die. Braun is no stranger to this change, which means the end of life in these plants. Trying to save it is not until you continue to pour in the alienation potion, but Braun is not going to do so. The vines slowly lose their vitality. It then condenses into a red seed. The connection in the mind has not disappeared. Recruited, a wave of ecstasy welled up in my heart. So the key is not the potion but this seed that can constantly be reborn and become powerful. This is somewhat similar to the summons in some novels. Pulling out the bright red seed, Braun put him away with excitement. Lab notes. The 143rd experiment. 6 seed. I found out that the effect of the alienation potion is not in the potion but in the seed. Seeds are the most important thing. Next I will continue the second phase of research, trying to leave a backhand in potions and seeds. Merlin. I will definitely become the greatest potions master in the world. The warm summer breeze blows away the cold of early spring. Fast forward to July. In the potions room of the Foley family, a child about 10 years old was looking at the middle-aged man in front of him with a pale face. After a while, the middle-aged man smiled and said, "Very good, Braun, you have now learned to hide part of your thoughts. And being able to resist my dementoring for so long shows that your brain closure technique has started. I can't help you with the study of brain closure. The rest of your studies depend on your own efforts." Looking at the little boy in front of her, Snape couldn't help but sigh with some emotion. This time of getting along. Let him have a lot of good feelings for this stubborn boy. At first, he agreed to help for a potion recipe for the Foley family, but he was a little unimpressed with Foley. In his opinion, a child must not last long and now he wants to learn only when he suddenly becomes interested or sees some book somewhere, which makes him curious about this kind of magic. When you lose interest, you will definitely not continue to learn when you have been doing boring exercises. This situation has been seen too much in his years as dean. But Braun didn't do that, and not only persisted. And while learning *** brain closure, other studies have not been put down. It's like potions. Sometimes when he arrives early, he sees Braun quietly refining potions. And that look of concentration he had rarely seen in Hogwarts students. Potions were not like other magic, and he needed to be accompanied by silence and loneliness. And Braun's calmness, which is not at this age, is also what makes Snape like him for a new life. He even said that seeing Braun was like seeing his younger self. "Teacher Snape is very grateful for your help during this time," Braun said respectfully, despite his pale face at the moment. Snape shook her head. "My help to you is only a small part. What's more important is that you have the perseverance to persevere. By the way, one more thing. Talk about it with your parents, and I'll be happy. Come downstairs with me." Severus, I heard you have something to find me. Mr. Foley hurried from outside. Looking at Snape at the dinner table, it wasn't clear what was going on. I saw that the members of the Foley family had already arrived. Snape didn't sell either, pulling a letter out of his robe. Put it on the table. The envelope was made of heavy parchment and the address was written in emerald green ink without a stamp. The back of the envelope is well preserved with wax. The coat of arms of a shield stands prominently. The coat of arms features 4 animals, a lion, badger, eagle and a snake surrounding the initial letter, H, of Hogwarts. 2 ribbons with the name and motto of the school surrounding the shield are decorative parts. Mr. Foley was a little excited. Although he was sure that his son would receive the admission letter, it was only from this moment that his heart finally returned to his stomach. "Congratulations, Braun, you received an offer of admission to Hogwarts. Because I taught at your house, this letter was not delivered by an owl. Let's take it apart and take a look. Quote, Snape looked at the excited Foley family and said to Braun. Braun nodded, shakily opening the letter. Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Albus Duncando, a master school recognized by the International Association of Witchcraft Unions. Dear Mr. Foley, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find the attached list of required books and instruments. The school will open on September 1st. Your owl should not report to school no later than July 31st. Your loyalty, Minerva McConaughey, assistant to the principal. Quote, suppress the excitement in my heart. Braun opened the attachment again. First-year students need 1. 3 sets of plain work robes black. 2. A plain pointed hat black worn during the day. 3. A pair of protective gloves made of dragon skin or similar material. 4. A winter cloak black, silver buckle. Please note, all student attire must be marked with a name tag. Textbook. All students are required to prepare the following books. Standard Mantras, Elementary, by Miranda Goshik. History of Magic, by Bathilda Bagshot. The Theory of Magic, by Adby Wolflin. A Guide to Transfiguration for Beginners, by Emery Zweig. 1,000 Magical Herbs and Mushrooms, by Philly Daspal. Magic Potions and Potions, by Asen Nigig. Monsters and Their Origins, by Newts Carman. Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Defense, by Quentin Limb. Other Equipment. A Magic Wand. 1 large pot pewter, standard size 2. A set of glass or crystal vials. A telescope. A brass balance. Students are allowed to bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are particularly reminded that first graders are not allowed to bring their own flying brooms, referring to brooms ridden by wizards and wizards. At this moment, Braun handed the letter in his hand to his father with excitement. Dad, I've been accepted to Hogwarts. Yes, my son. Mr. Foley was also a little excited. Although he had not read the letter, he couldn't help but read it carefully at the moment, and then handed it to his wife. When she finished reading it, she took it and said that she would seal the letter and keep it in the family forever. Severus, if nothing happens, stay for lunch at noon. By the way, Braun, didn't you say that your potions came to fruition? Show your teacher later. He's a potions master who can definitely help you. Quote, yes, Teacher Snape, I have developed a new potion myself. I hope you can help me see. Quote, hearing the potions, Snape, who originally wanted to leave, was in no hurry to refuse at this moment. He was also intrigued by what Braun said he had researched as a potion he had developed. Nod, yes. The lunch was very attentive because of the guest Snape. There are not only carefully grilled steaks. A variety of cakes, desserts and wine are also indispensable. After everyone has eaten and drunk enough, it hasn't been long before it rests. Snape couldn't wait to see Braun's potions. Braun certainly wouldn't refuse. Take his father and Snape to the potions room. Take your own alienation potion out of the cabinet. Hand it to Snape. Very strange potion. There seems to be solitary grass in it. This is the raw material for the chaos potion and Fugu eyes. The rest of the material was so complicated that I couldn't smell it for a while. Quote, Snape frowned as she smelled the potion. But even that scared Braun out. After these months of research, he not only researched the medicine of restraint, also to prevent the potion from being cracked. He also added a lot of unrelated herbs. But even so, I didn't expect to be seen as the 2 most important materials. Suffice it to say that Snape deserves to be a potions master. This shouldn't be a potion to take, is it? It feels a bit like explosive potions, which can be used in battle. Quote, Braun nodded. Yes, these potions are what I call alienation potions. They can alienate plants. It can play the role of delaying enemies for wizards to facilitate escape. Quote, very interesting idea. Show me how. Quote, Snape nodded. Then prepare to observe the properties of the potion. I saw Braun take out a guinea pig. Squeeze out a drop of the mouse's blood into the potion. Then explain as you operate. After alienation, plants will fall into chaos and attack all living forms around them. Adding the user's blood to the alienation potion in advance can prevent the alienated plant from attacking. Quote, then pour the potion onto the plants in the culture tank. The elixir of alienation must touch the plant, and the grass seed plant can have an effect. For a clearer effect, I chose adult plants. It's a very common weed outside. Such plants can better see the effect of the elixir. Quote, as soon as the words fell, I saw that the weeds in the culture tank began to rise wildly, and the appearance became more and more hideous. Without saying a word, Braun threw in the prepared rabbit and the rat just now. As soon as the two small animals landed, the rabbits were strangled by the vine within a few strokes. Although the guinea pig looked flustered, it was not hurt at all. Some vines even instinctively protect it. After about 5 minutes, the plants in the tank began to wither. In the end, all disappeared without leaving a single trace. The survival time of plants is about 5 minutes. The time can be extended by increasing the alienation agent. After the plant dies, it will all disappear without residue. However, the surrounding soil will be damaged and cause some degree of desertification. Quote, Snape looked shocked. The shock that the scene just now gave him silenced him for a long time. But the look in Braun's eyes became more and more complicated. Although he already thought of Braun's talent very high, he did not expect him to be such a genius. Braun may not know much about the value of the potion. But Snape, as a potions master, understands. This is no longer a matter of potions. This is a reopening of one in the existing combat system of the wizarding world. He had a hunch that as long as Braun continued to study this alienation potion as a basis, he could open up a new type of combat independent of the spell transfiguration. And this is undoubtedly big news for the wizarding world, which has not changed for hundreds of years. It is not even an exaggeration to say that there has been a major change in hundreds of years. And its creators were not those prestigious potions masters and powerful wizards. Rather, a little-known little wizard. How could this not shock him? Turning his head and about to say something to Mr. Foley. But he found that the other party was looking at him with a smile at the moment. And he suddenly realized. Braun, as the son of Albert Foley, surely knew about his achievements. There must be some purpose in calling yourself over. Otherwise, this secret thing will definitely not be exposed to yourself. And that's exactly what Snape thought. After Braun puts the potion in front of Mr. Foley. His actions are no different from Snape at the moment, first shocked and then desperate to hide the secret. But after Braun's repeated explanations and dissuasion, it was finally decided to let the potion spread in the wizarding world. It's just that there should be a plan. How, Severus, is Braun's potion powerful? Quote, Albert, don't sell me the guanzi. I know you didn't just ask me to praise you for having a good son. Say, what exactly do you want to do? What's the purpose? Mr. Foley was not annoyed by what Snape said. Instead, he said with excitement. As you can see, the value of this potion is simply too great. This is a new path. I dare say no one has ever had such a brilliant idea in thousands of years. This is a way of fighting that belongs only to potionsians. He is different from spells and transfiguration. He has a strong vitality. Endless possibilities. You can imagine how precious he is. Quote, speaking of this, Mr. Foley's mood couldn't help but fall down. Again, I can't keep this secret alone. The Foley family can't either. So I need your help, Severus. 99. But Snape was a little unimpressed. I don't believe you haven't enlisted the help of other wizarding families. Albert. 99. Of course I've looked, and more than one. The Greengrass family, the Ollivander family, the Weasley family, etc. These families who have been friends with our family for generations are willing to join my family for this exciting thing, but none of them have any potions masters. And others I don't feel at ease. Think about it and only you are the right fit, Severus. Young and powerful. You know what I used to be, Albert. Snape said indifferently. Of course I know. But like my father said. You're not that kind of person, Severus. That's why I still believe in you. Quote. Mr. Foley's words softened Snape's expression a lot. After a moment of silence, he asked, what do you want me to do for you? Or, what good can I have? 35. A smile appeared on Mr. Foley's face. Just say yes. What you have to do is simple. First help my son make a name, I will help him wash away his shame. After that, I will hold a press conference where you will need to stand as a potions master for the alienation potion. Finally, I promise to keep the secret of the formula with everyone and help each other. And the reward, how about the formula of the alienation potion? I don't think there's anything more exciting for a potions master like you. What you said is true. Snape's eyes stared at Mr. Foley as if to see through his heart. Obviously not very convinced of his words. After all, the value of the alienation potion is self-evident. He didn't believe that such a recipe would be given to him so easily. Of course, and don't use your dementors on me. However, the premise of giving you the recipe is that you must first sign this contract, and promise not to tell anyone about the formula. The 850 can be configured and used by yourself but cannot be supplied to others. Quote, quote. Mr. Foley took out an old parchment contract. It has been signed with many names, large and small. Weasley, Greengrass, and other well-known names in the wizarding world are on it. Sure enough, I knew it wasn't that simple. The contract of the Starry Sky God. The Foley family has a lot of treasures. Quote, Snape taunted. I promise you, though. Like you said, nothing fascinates me more than this powerful formula. 35. Having lost Lily, his only pursuit now is only great strength. Alien agents are just right. Grab a quill on the table and sign your name with a magic dragon's blood potion. Another drop of his own blood dripped into the name. The blood fell into the parchment as if it had come to life. Severus Snape blends into one. Disappeared without a trace. There seemed to be a strong will in the sky at this moment. It is as if the stars converge and shine. A strange and mysterious voice echoed in everyone's ears. Although I don't know what he said, I can understand what he means. The contract is established, and with this sound, all those who signed their names on the deed felt something. I felt an extra shackle in my body. This shackle usually does not affect them in any way, but when someone tries to break the contract, there is a possibility of mortal threats. And with the completion of the contract, this mysterious parchment also turned into a starlight and disappeared into the sky, as if it had never existed. Looking at the disappearing parchment, Mr. Foley had some regret in his eyes. But this regret soon disappeared again. Braun, bring the recipe. Braun respectfully handed over a piece of parchment. Snape was not polite. I stared at the recipe written in this dark green ink. Solitary grass, dried nettle, puffer fish, 3-part rat tail, vines of alienated species. Mistletoe berry. Very immature. Some of the things in it have the opposite effect. If I improve it, I can increase the effect by 10%. By the way, what is the seed of alienation in it? Snape asked as she put down the recipe and looked up. The seed teacher who condenses after the death of many alienated plants. After death, it will condense into seeds. Why the experiment just now? You left a backhand. Braun didn't speak with a shy smile. Snape instantly realized. No wonder some of these materials work in reverse. Although it is only used in small amounts, it will make the medicine impure, which will reduce the effect. Logically speaking, you can't fail to see it. It turned out to be intentional. Quote. Braun blushed a little, but Mr. Foley didn't feel it. Isn't this a normal operation for a potions master? Severus, don't tell me that those potions you configured to sell weren't reduced. Snape snorted coldly and did not speak. But that is clearly the default. This is a default rule among potions masters. Both to ensure that the formula will not be lost and to prevent one's peers from reverse deriving the prescription. At the same time, in order to increase the price of potions, the trickle of water continues to earn gold galleons. It's like the wolf poison that just appeared in these 2 years. Not to mention the price, and the effect is actually only inhibition. Is there really no way to suppress it for a long time? Maybe not, but it's more likely because it doesn't fit the long stream of thin water. Another example is acne medicine. It's the same thing. That's why the potions masters are so rich one by one. I need the original formula. Also, in exchange I can help you add some materials to make it harder to decipher this castrated recipe. 5. Braun set his sights on his father. Although he is a traverser, he is very calculating and scheming. He is far inferior to his father in this life. In Braun's opinion, he had just developed a new potion. Although I was excited, I didn't care much. But when he showed these in front of Mr. Foley, he had used this potion to connect so many families. Now even Snape is tied up to the boat. You can see Mr. Foley's means. Mr. Foley frowned. After a moment of contemplation, he said, impossible. However, I can give you a second-generation formula. Quote. No problem. 35. Snape agreed happily. This was also for him to study. The second-generation formula is the second-generation formula. Braun gave it to him. Braun didn't delay, pulled out a piece of parchment and wrote. Yes, the second generation did not leave the recipe. Not only the second-generation formula, but also the original formula. It's all in Braun's head. This also ensures maximum formulation safety. Look at some scribbled handwriting. Snape frowned. But after seeing these contents, he stretched out again, and said with a little doubt. There are still seeds of alienation. What about the cultivation method? But seeing Mr. Foley's sneering gaze. Come to think of it, I can't get it. That is to say, the effect of the second-generation formula is to cooperate with the plants that control the alienation of the seed. That's right, we can give you one if you need one. Quote. Where Snape would refuse, she agreed without hesitation. Took the red seeds handed over by Braun. I leaned in front of my eyes and observed it repeatedly. Adding your own blood to the alienation potion and pouring it on this alienation seed will be able to control it. However, its intelligence is low and it can only exercise some simple commands. 99. Braun added on the sidelines. This seed is the seed of the seed that he has been cultivating over time. Perhaps it is because alienated plants still have plant characteristics. After Braun has been repeatedly watered with the drug, that alienated plant turned out to have the effect of splitting the subplant. Although these daughter strains are independent of the mother, they are controlled by the mother. The same goes for their seeds. If Braun wants, he can even force the mother plant to devour these alienated plants. Boost strength. That's why Braun has been persuading Mr. Foley to publish the alienation agent. Not only can he earn gold galleons, but he can also let wizards help him cultivate alienated plants for free. This is his real calculation. Interesting, really funny. Braun, your whimsy really takes my breath at times. Well, Albert has finished everything, AFDB. It's time for me to go, too. Now I can't wait to do my research. As for the matter of modifying the recipe, I'll definitely send it to you a week ago. I will plan other requirements as soon as possible. Saying goodbye to the Foley family, Snape couldn't wait to leave. The father and son in the room looked at each other and smiled. Everything was silent. A week is fleeting. Snape is truly a potions master. After his deployment, the difficulty of the original recipe is not only more than a dozen more than the original ingredients. However, the medicinal effect and refining difficulty have not changed. On the contrary, it is much simpler than the original recipe. You must know that the difficulty of potions increases with the increase of raw materials at the time of refining. And it is unbelievable that Snape can reduce the difficulty of refining after adding more than a dozen raw materials to the potion. After getting the recipe, Mr. Foley and Braun stepped up their refining. After 3 days of refining day and night, 1,000 bottles of alienation potions were finally refined. After a day off, Mr. Foley began sending messages to all areas of the wizarding world. Prepare for a grand banquet at home to celebrate your son's acceptance letter to Hogwarts. Of course, this is only on the surface. In fact, this is after Mr. Foley and Snape have discussed it. Ready to use this banquet to officially push Braun to the front of the stage. Wash away the humiliating title of the Foley family's squib. By the way, the news of the alienation potion was pushed to the wizarding world. With the message of Mr. Foley, the calm wizarding world also began to talk. Even the Daily Prophet even opened a page. Let's discuss this. Albert Foley, the head of the Foley family, will soon host a banquet for his son's successful admission to Hogwarts. Is it a fuss or a family decline? Mr. Foley sneered while looking at the newspaper. I hope tomorrow this group of bedbugs who catch the wind will dare to say so. Over the years, with the death of his father, the Foley family, while still wealthy, had actually begun to decline. This made him anxious and began to focus on cultivating Braun at the same time. I thought it would be a few years before Braun would be able to stand on his own. But I didn't expect my son to give him such a big surprise. And this surprise will bring the Foley family back to the top. Put down the newspaper. Mr. Foley began directing the house elves in the house to set them up. He really can't wait for tomorrow's banquet. He couldn't help but see the ugly faces of those wizards. Thinking like this in his heart, Mr. Foley couldn't help but burst out laughing. The house elves looked at each other, not knowing what had happened to their owners. Far away in the hills outside the village of Outresan Catchfall, a magical and quirky 4-story building sits here. This is the burrow, the residence of the Weasley family. What is different from the past is this house that is noisy all day. It was much quieter at the moment. Inside, beautifully crafted dresses and shoes were thrown in all corners of the living room. And Mrs. Weasley is eager to let her children try on clothes. From time to time, reprimand the twins who are fighting. Enough, George. Fred, change my clothes honestly. And Ronald, don't waste any more time. Percy, Bill, you go and call him out from the second floor. I really don't know what this kid is doing in the house all day. Quote. Molly S. Weasley commanded methodically while yelling at his child. Fred put on a white shirt, smiling at his mother. Percy has a crush on a Muggle girl and is thinking about how to confess to her. I had seen the girl in the village not far away. Quote. Shut up, Fred. Wear your clothes honestly. 99. Percy came down the stairs with some anger. Apparently very dissatisfied with his brother's exposure of his unrequited love. Stop arguing. We'll have to go to your Uncle Foley's house to help him later. Don't waste any more time on me or you'll all leave me at home. 35. Hearing this, Fred and Percy pursed their lips. All of them wore their own clothes, as if they were not the two of them who had just quarreled at all. Looking at the children who had finally begun to try on clothes, Mrs. Weasley finally breathed a sigh of relief. After combing her little daughter's hair, I also hurried upstairs to change my clothes. Arthur, don't sleep anymore. While changing her clothes, Mrs. Weasley called out to her husband, who was still sleeping soundly in bed. Let me rest a little longer, we're just going to help. No need to get up so early. Arthur S. Weasley muttered a few words when he heard his wife's voice and turned back to sleep. It's a good habit to be on time. Arthur, a spring like water. 39. With a wave of her wand, Mrs. Weasley transferred the sleeping Arthur S. Weasley woke up. It scared him into an agitation. Oh, okay Molly. Irritated by cold water, Arthur S. Weasley was clearly out of sleep. Wiped his face helplessly and sighed. You go to the shower. I went down to help the children sort out their clothes. Remember, be on time Arthur and don't be late. I know you're tired during this time but keep going. 35. Well, I will, Molly. Kissed his own wife. Watch her leave in a hurry. After rubbing his face, he began to wash. During this time, the Ministry of Magic began to purge Muggle items again. Some wizards were punished for using magic to modify Muggle items. So during this time, he had to run around every day to raid the homes of those wizards. So much so that he rarely has time to rest, which is why he is so tired. Standing under the shower while washing your hair. Arthur S. Weasley's thoughts couldn't help but go back to one night the other day. Albert, is there something to do with me so late? In the box of the Leaky Cauldron bar. Arthur S. Weasley wondered at Albert Foley, across from him. Mr. Foley did not go around in circles and said bluntly. Of course, Arthur, I need your help. Quote, help, I don't think I can help you in any way. Arthur S. Weasley ideographic period. I poured a glass of absinthe and watched the bright green liquid in the glass drain. Mr. Foley left him alone and said to himself, my son Braun invented a magical potion. But I don't think our family can fully keep him. So you're like pulling me up, aren't you? But I don't have much power, Albert, you know. 35. This kind of thing is not uncommon in the wizarding world. Some potions families and alchemist families have invented some magical items or potions and think that they cannot protect them on their own, so they will look for several well-connected families to give benefits. Then work together to guard the item. One of the most famous is the Flow Powder. Invented by wizard Ignetta Wismith. Guarded by more than a dozen of the world's largest wizarding families. Not even the ministries of magic of various countries have the right to meddle. And the location is extremely secretive, although all English wizards know that the company licensed to produce Flow Powder is located in Diagon Alley. But no wizard ever found it. Arthur S. Weasley was puzzled that Albert had found him. Instead, Albert Foley explains. Of course, I know Arthur. But Arthur, you have a lot of family. I think there are no more Weasley relatives in English wizarding than in England. 39. Arthur S. Weasley suddenly said, so you were fighting this idea. But I have to tell you first, I can't command them. Your abacus has failed. Quote. Of course, I never expected that. Rather, Mr. Foley approached Arthur S. Weasley whispered in his ear. Mr. Weasley shrugged. Well, since you want to. Pick up the pen and sign the contract. When Arthur S. Weasley walked downstairs dressed, I found my wife and children sitting at the table eating breakfast. 873. One by one, they were careful not to let the dresses on their bodies be stained with sauce. These dresses were subjected to thermostatic and drying spells. So once it gets dirty, it is difficult to clean it with a cleaning charm. Thankfully, they just ate sandwiches. Saw the husband come down. Mrs. Weasley half complained. Hurry up and eat, everyone is waiting for you. Also, eat less. Millie prepared breakfast over there. Mr. Weasley nodded as he ate his sandwich. Wait until Mr. Weasley finishes eating. Molly S. Weasley sorted out the family's clothes again. After checking the protective spells in the house. Like his own family, he put his hand on a huge old tire. A few goblins not far away looked at the excitement curiously. I want to know what these wizards are going to do. Perhaps it was because they thought it was funny that they stood there dumbfounded, and one by one they called their companions. Some of the daring ones even ran over to see it up close. Get away, you goblin, quote, Ronald shouted at the approaching goblin. But the goblins were obviously not so afraid of him, but instead laughed and laughed. Okay, Ronald, don't go over. We have no time to waste. I saw my youngest son and wanted to run over. Mrs. Weasley hurriedly scolded. Arthur S. Weasley looked at his pocket watch again. Put your own foot on the tire. Shouted. Ready, kids. 39. The voice just fell. Everyone disappeared in place with a thud. Startled the approaching goblins, shouted and ran away into the distance. And the goblins who stayed in the distance laughed loudly at these frightened hapless eggs. Mocking their embarrassment, on a hillside outside the village of Forley, Braun was bored and waiting with Dom. Just as he was holding the grass roots. When I was lying comfortably on the hillside, I was startled by a bang. When I stood up, I saw that a pile of red hair appeared here in the originally empty place next to me. Cousin Braun. Ginny ran over and grabbed Braun's arm very affectionately. Hi Ginny, seriously, you're so beautiful today. Braun praised. Ginny blushed and whispered thank you. Braun, your dad told me you invented a new potion yourself. What a smart kid. 99. Molly S. Weasley touched Braun's head, obviously very happy about his nephew. Just a trivial achievement, Aunt Molly. By the way, let's go. Mom prepared breakfast for us. There's still a whole bunch of things to do in that today. Quote, quote. That's right, there are indeed a lot of things today. Fred, George, you carry the portkey, which is the punishment you gave yesterday for stuffing spiders in Ronald's pants. Remember to be careful not to be seen by muggles when using the flotation charm, which is not far from muggle villages. Okay, Mom. Fred and George crested their heads. Then let's go first, Braun inquired. Of course, Braun, leave them both alone, it's punishment for both of them. Let's go over first, Molly S. Weasley replied to Braun. So, a group of people walked in front of them talking and laughing. Not far behind, Fred and George pretended to move tires bitterly. Braun, the new robe you gave me is so comfortable. Ronald whispered to Braun. Is it? That's good. I thought you wouldn't like that. Of course I like it. It's just that the only bad thing is that you gave me the same gift as Percy. Are you too lazy to pick? Ha ha, this is all you can see. Braun scratched his head as if embarrassed. Of course, he didn't give the robe or anything. It should have been sent by his mother. If only he had given Dolly's fist set to Ronald. Thinking of this, it seems that the boxing is still in his room. Forget it, give it as a gift for next Christmas. Cousin, don't listen to him, Ronald was happy when he got the robe. Call you his best friend. Ginny. Ronald called out his sister's name with some embarrassment. But Ginny wasn't afraid of him. On the contrary, he looked proud. By the way, I like the wizard chess you gave me, Ronald. But I don't know much, you can teach me later. 99. Braun saw that Ronald was a little angry and deliberately changed the subject. Sure enough, as soon as Ronald heard this, he instantly forgot about his anger and said with a little excitement. Really, Braun, you don't know wizard chess? I mean, no problem. I'd love to teach you. Although he tried his best to pretend to be calm, the smile that almost reached the base of his ears was enough to show the excitement in his heart. After all, if his mother used Bron to educate him, he could refute it by teaching Bron to play wizarding chess. Of course, that's just a thought. In fact, he did not dare to do so. The hillside is not far from Foley Manor, so the crowd soon arrived. The first thing that catches your eye when you enter the castle is the beautiful gardens. A group of beautiful flower fairies are flying among the flowers. It's so pretty. Envy flashed under Ginny's eyes. This is the flower fairy that moved in January this year. Originally, I thought they were just staying here for the time being, but I didn't expect to make their home here. Bron explained to Ginny. Settled. Didn't flower fairies migrate with the flower season? Now there are fewer wildflower fields, basically ruined by muggles. So some flower fairies have also changed their biochemical habits. 35. Ginny's mood was a little low, and it was clear that Bron's words touched her a little. Let's go inside. Mom prepared a lot of delicious food. Molly, Arthur, here you are. Let's go eat first. Dobby, you guys stop and take a break. Wait a while and continue the arrangement. Quote. Mr. Foley, who was directing the house elves to set up the hall, saw it. When the Weasleys arrived, they said hello. Albert has been busy for a long time. Yes, there are too many things. If it weren't for their help, I wouldn't know when to arrange it if I used magic alone. But it's already about it. Next up are the ingredients, but I've borrowed a batch of house elves from Hogwarts. Dealing with tomorrow's banquet is no problem. The main reason for you to come in advance is to help me arrange the position of the invitees and determine the list in case I miss anything. Have eaten. Bill and the Weasleys went to help. George, Ronald and Bron's younger children were kicked out of the castle and left to play on their own. Bron and they felt very comfortable lying on the grass and blowing the mountain breeze. Bron, I heard that you invented potions yourself. George, who was lying on Bron's side, spoke. Well, yes, but just luck. If it weren't for my father's financial support, I probably won't succeed either. Oh, I envy you. Freed said, a little lost. We're also trying to invent something, but unfortunately we have too little money. 35. Hearing Fred's words, Bron was a little surprised. I never thought that now the 3.1 brothers had already begun to invent. What did you invent? Bron asked with some curiosity. Speaking of his proud works, George and Fred got excited. Look at what we call it, truancy sugar. 99. George added. Your nostrils bleed after eating. Not really bleeding, of course, but a red snot-like liquid. 99. While speaking, it seemed that he was afraid that Bron did not understand too much. Stuffed a piece of white nougat into his mouth. It didn't take long for a bright red liquid to start coming out of George's nose. How? Isn't that interesting? 35. George said while bleeding from a fake nose. Using the shell of a discolored giant snail. No, that animal is too expensive and toxic. Sneeze blades and phoenix flowers. At this time, Fred and George were a little surprised. Fred said, a little lost. Hey, this is a recipe that we have been thinking about for a long time. That's what you said. George is also a little lost. Fred, I don't think we're suitable for joke props. Otherwise, the formula will be guessed at once. That's right, George, I agree with you. We may not really be suitable for these things. Quote. Fred was also crestfallen. After all, anyone who has worked hard to make something that has been made for a long time will definitely not feel too good in his heart if he sees through it at a glance. Don't give up. I think you're very creative and you have to stick to it. Quote. Bron encouraged. I just had an occupational disease attack. Who would have thought that he would really guess the formula if he guessed so casually? It made both brothers want to give up. How can this work? He also plans to invest in it for the first month. If these two brothers stop working, who will they invest in? Seeing the two brothers' disbelieving eyes, Bron waved his hand. I can offer you some research funding. But you have to have a share of my research results. Quote. George asked in disbelief. Bron, you're not lying to us. 35. Fred continued. Is it really going to provide funding? Of course, he said and took out 10 gold gallons. Yes, this is my upfront investment. If you succeed in developing new candy and something like that, I will even add an even say to help you open a store. But I'm going to take a 60% stake in your research. Of course I didn't ask for it for nothing, I know a lot of potions-related things. Try to help you change the recipe of the potion to make it harder for others to imitate. How? The two brothers' faces were a little ugly when they heard in 05 that Braun was about to ask for 60% of the shares, but after hearing his addition, they looked a lot better. Their potions is not well learned. One is because they don't like old bats very much, and the other is that potions is something that is difficult to achieve without a lot of practice. Even Braun, who comes from a family of potions, doesn't he practice a lot every day? Fred and George, on the other hand, had no money to buy materials because of their families, that is, they practiced making potions a few times in potions class. Inventing the recipe for quick-acting truancy sugar is already racking your brains. I tried many times to make such a semi-finished product. It's always easy to fail. If they could get Braun into the group, they would have more free time to research more things. The two brothers muttered for a moment, looked at each other and nodded. Yes, Braun, but 60% is too much. 50%, if you agree. Braun pretended to be a little embarrassed but finally reluctantly said, well, for our sake, I agree. How about we sign the contract later? Of course, the two brothers nodded in agreement. Looking at the somewhat grateful eyes of the two brothers, Braun's heart blossomed. 50% of the shares are quite a lot. And it seems that if you want 60%, maybe the other party can agree. But Braun is not prepared to do this, after all, there is no end to money. What if these two brothers don't pick a pick because they have too little money in hand? He knew how lucrative the Weasley Magic Trick Workshop would be opened by the two brothers in the future. After the success in Diagon Alley, he also opened a branch in Hogsmeade Village, and because Weasley's store was too attractive to customers. Let the Honeyduke Candy Store and Joko Joke Shop sue the Ministry of Magic for monopoly. However, the final result was rejected by the Ministry of Magic. Braun, I brought the wizard chess with me. Come over and I'll teach you how to get down. Ronald ran from a distance holding the wizard chess. Ginny was followed by him. She went to Braun's bedroom to get a new storybook. Fred, George, are you going to be together? No, go by yourself. We prefer to walk around. After saying that, the two people shouted and ran away, apparently preparing to go around the village. Ronald excitedly ran to Braun's side. Then lay out the wizard chess separately. Let me tell you the rules, Braun. First of all, we have to decide who goes first by throwing the color pieces, and then different pieces have different rules. Kings and queens can generally only protect the bishop in the middle by acting in the 9 palaces. The car berserker can rampage, the horse knight can only go diagonally. As for these, hey, don't pierce me with a sword. Slap down a minion who pokes his finger with a sword. These minions can only move forward 1 grid at a time. Okay, let's get started. 35. Braun listened to the same thing and understood how to play. Some are like chess but with fewer cannons and elephants. The rest has largely not changed. As the two of them got ready, the pieces on the wizard's chessboard couldn't wait one by one. The berserker biting his shield patted his chest with his arm. It seems a little impatient. The knights on both sides also drew their long swords. The king held the sword in his arms and lowered his eyebrows. The queen seemed to be pondering. A little. Oh, it's really bad luck, quote. Ronald said with some chagrin. I'm 3, I'll go first. Braun thought for a moment. Soldier, step forward. After giving the order, the soldier obediently moved forward. Knight, you appear. Ha, that's interesting. 99. Braun watched as the bishop on his side took off the crown on his head. Bow slightly. Then all the defeated pieces came to the stage to find their place. It seems ready for another fight. Braun, amazing. Are you really playing for the first time? I don't feel like you're a newbie at all. Quote. Ronald asked in disbelief. It's really that Braun just showed that the strength is too strong. If he hadn't set a trap, he might have been defeated. Of course, I couldn't control these pieces before. This set of wizard chess is still the one you gave me. Quote. Ronald looked at Braun with a genuine smile and thought about Braun's jerkiness becoming more and more skillful. I can't help but believe it, and I can only blame it on Braun being smarter. Do you still want to go? Ronald asked. Braun shook his head. No, we've been in a lot of games. By the way, Ronald, these wizard chests looks quite interesting. There were not only Vikings but also knights with broadswords. Do you know who invented these wizard chests? Or what is the history like? I'm a little curious. I have to say that Ronald is indeed obsessed with wizard chess, not only playing well, but also recording a lot of related history. Of course, Bron, you're asking the right person. Single quote. Ronald couldn't help but get excited to see that Bron had another problem asking for advice. He cleared his throat and said, the origin of wizard chess is an 11th century squib called Parr. After being sent out of the wizarding world by his parents, he was placed outside the church. Although Parr is a squib, he has a brilliant mind. It took only 10 years to become bishop of Skullholt Church. At that time, the power of the clergy was still very large, not only with various powers beyond the king, but also with an army to wage war. And Parr, as bishop, is no exception. He not only led an army to defeat the barbarian Viking invaders, but also formed alliances with many countries. And the wizard chess is also the pawn he used to play tactics at that time. This is also because there are Vikings in the chess pieces. At that time this piece was also called parchis. What does that have to do with wizards? Isn't Parr a squib? Bron asked curiously. Of course it has something to do with wizards. I want to think. Seeing Ronald's wandering eyes, Bron knew he must have forgotten. Otherwise, it would not be like now. Just wanted to get up, but found that Ginny, who was 873 on the side, spoke. Ginny closed the book and said, of course, the relationship between wizards and muggles has begun to become strained, and various witch hunts have appeared on the land. Of course, wizards were not intimidated by the muggles who were going to burn them, but rather interested. After all, with the help of magic spells, the flames do not hurt us in the slightest. After knowing that the flames were ineffective against us, the teased muggles were furious, and some muggles began to set their sights on little wizards like us. For a time, there were more and more young wizards who were mutilated by muggles. The wizards also began their revenge against muggles. A big war between the two sides is on the verge of breaking out. Wizarding academies gather wizards, and the muggle temples began to gather their armies. But the muggles were so shameless and without the slightest morality that they carried out sneak attacks on us. With the help of the goblins, they quickly besieged one of the wizards' troops. Ronald finally remembered at this time. Take advantage of the gap to say. This time thanks to Parr this squib. With his help, the wizards managed to escape, but unfortunately Pal was killed by the angry muggles after helping the wizards escape. After the victory in the decisive battle between wizards and muggles, the Council of Wizards at the time decided to honor Pal. He is praised for being a squib, but he has precious qualities that belong to wizards. The pieces he created are also known as wizard chess. Indicates the recognition of his identity by the wizarding community. His remains were also collected and buried by the wizards in their family's tomb. With the end of the story, the afterglow of the sun gradually began to fall on the earth, shining red against the crisp grass. The song of the shepherd in the distance also drifted with the wind. The times at the beginning of creation. Across the silvery sea. They came with the legend, which is unspeakable and too dark. The charm of war and blood, forcing us to look to it. Today's Forley Castle is particularly lively. The sky is still dark. Bron had finished his breakfast early. The castle gates, which used to be closed tightly, have long since opened. 2 house elves stood on either side of the gate wearing clean red curtains, waiting for the arrival of the guests. Bill and Charlie stood in the castle hall and led the wizards to find their place. Fred led Ollivander to the front position. Good morning, Mr. Ollivander, you're here too early. George continued. Yes, you're the first one today. People are old and can't sleep. Coming early saves you a moment of losing time. Pushed his eyes. Ollivander said with joy. Dogwood, 11¼ inch long, with a core of unicorn feathers. This is a pair of wands I made myself, which is amazing because the wand material used and the unicorn feathers are taken from the same mother. So when these 2 wands are together, the magic will be blessed. The character of the dogwood wand is very peculiar and mischievous, and because of their natural love of play, the dogwood wand insists on choosing a partner that can provide them with fun. Most dogwood wands have an interesting drawback. They refuse to cast the silent spell and are quite noisy when they cast their magic. Quote. Of course, you're right. Mr. Ollivander, 35. Yes, there is no mistake at all. The two brothers replied one after another. Pull out the wand that is inserted in your waist. Then handed it over. Ollivander took the wand. Sentimental, nice and well maintained, and the magic flows smoothly. It seems that your wand is happy with you. Quote. After experimenting with 2 wands, Ollivander handed them back again. Of course, we oil them every day. And it is waxed regularly. Send Ollivander to his place. The two brothers returned to their original positions and stood again, waiting for the arrival of new guests. As the sun rises, so do the wizards. Outside the manor, there are all kinds of horse-drawn carriages. But these horses are smart and just quietly eating the hay sent by the elves. Stayed there quietly. At this moment, the number of people in the hall gradually increased. The piano plays by itself, and the elegant and pleasant sound of the piano echoes in the hall. Well-dressed wizards gathered in 2s and 3s to chat. From time to time, a glass of red wine is removed from the flying plate. Or take off a carefully cooked and steaming snack from that long exaggerated dining table. Although the wizards in the hall are all well-dressed, there are still some clues that can be seen through their figures and some subtle dresses, that is, the corners of their mouths are full of ridicule and excitement. Aiden, long time no see. Yes, I didn't expect you to come too. I remember you weren't editor-in-chief of the Daily Prophet. The wizard known as Aiden looked at his old acquaintance with surprise. The editor-in-chief sighed. It's not just me, even the Minister of Magic, Murison Barnold, is here. I really don't know what the Foley family is doing. Celebrating his son's enrollment. These pure-blood families are really getting more and more absurd. Who knows that? Let's take a look. Anyway, let's also come to see the excitement. 5. Haha, you were right at all. Such things happen in all corners of the hall. The banquet officially began, but wizards are still pouring towards Forley Castle. The banquet lasted and night fell. Finally, basically most of the famous wizards in the wizarding world have arrived. It's almost time to see that people have finally arrived. Mr. Foley said sorry to the wizards around him. Then he picked up the cup and fork on the table and tapped it gently. Although the sound is not loud, it is quickly discovered by these deaf wizards. The sound of conversation and melodious music has also stopped at this moment. The hall also became quiet. Mr. Foley was clearly pleased with the silence of the crowd. Standing on the stage, watching the wizards in the audience with a mocking gaze, a sneer appeared at the corner of their mouths. How could he not know that everyone secretly mocked him for his absurdity? It's a pity that these wizards have lost their eyes. Thank you very much for joining my son Braun today. That's right, my son went to Hogwarts today. This also wanted some malicious slander that the Foley family had a squib wizard shut up. Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this. It turns out that this is for the sake of justification. No wonder so many people came over. But even so, everyone can't help but be sarcastic about Mr. Foley on stage. And even if it is not a squib, late awakening means less magic. The lack of magic means that even Braun Foley is just an ordinary wizard after graduating. Some families who have a fairly good relationship with the Foley family can't help but sigh. Foley, this potions family is still in decline after all. Some rival families are rejoicing, because it means that they can tear the greater good from the Foley family and get a bigger piece of the pie. Seeing everyone's expressions of joy or worry, Mr. Foley made a secret note. Then the voice turned. Of course, there is no need to bother you for such a small matter. The next thing is the point. But in order to ensure the authority and authenticity of the matter, I decided to introduce you to the famous potions master, Severus Snape. Severus Snape, who was sitting in the front seat, nodded at the crowd first. Then unceremoniously stand on the stage. Take a tube of potion from your arms. Alienation elixir. Being able to grow plants quickly in a short period of time and produce alienation can buy you plenty of time when you are in danger. According to experiments, plants alienated by alienation potions could block an aura for 3 minutes. Enough time for you to escape. At the same time, the plants that grow from the alienation potion can act as a shield for you when encountered, and the strength is equivalent to the defense power of an armor talisman charm. Not waiting for everyone to discuss, Snape takes out the props he prepared in advance. Next, I will show you the experimental footage recorded by the projection stone. I saw Snape put a palm-sized white crystal-like stone into a strangely shaped machine. With the operation of the machine, a rather huge picture was projected in front of him. I saw two masked wizards fighting, and suddenly one wizard was severely injured, and the victor just wanted to take advantage of the chase, when he found that the injured wizard threw out a potion bottle and scattered the potion all over the grass in front of him. I saw that the originally weak grass instantly swelled wildly and turned into a mess of dancing vines, making the victor busy. The wounded wizard took the opportunity to use the apparition to move away. The picture flashed and the vines were still waving, but this time the wizard was seriously injured and difficult to escape, and the other party found the opportunity to use the attack spell but was blocked by the vine. Then the injured man continued to spill potions and successfully delayed his companions to save him. Next, various terrains, flame test, defense test, growth rate test, friend or foe test. One test after another opened everyone's eyes and couldn't help but be shocked by the power of this potion. Minister of Magic Millicent Barnold's originally casual expression also became serious at this moment. The eyes stared at the projected picture and were reluctant to let go of the slightest. The other wizards, even if they were not like this, were silent one by one, their eyes widened. The test is over. Snape removes the projection stone. Didn't wait for him to say anything. Some wizards couldn't wait to ask. Master Snape, is this your newly refined potion? Master Snape, how can this potion be sold? The Ministry of Magic is willing to buy in large quantities. Of course, if you are willing to sell the recipe, we will also give you a satisfactory price. Millicent Barnold asked sincerely, who knew that Snape actually shook his head. I'm sorry, but this is not the potion I refined, so I can't decide where it belongs. You didn't make it. Who is that? The crowd was obviously not very satisfied with this answer. But some clever wizards began to ask Mr. Foley at this moment. Since it is not the potion that Snape refines, and everyone is in Foley's house at the moment, it is self-evident who the owner of the potion is at this moment. Master Foley, did you craft this magical potion? A stocky wizard said respectfully. The eyes of the rest of the wizards also looked at Mr. Foley, looking forward to their answers. However, they did not put their hopes in Mr. Foley, asking if it was he who was refining nothing more than throwing bricks and jade. They thought it was the work of a certain potions master who had joined the Foley family. After all, how could a person who couldn't even refine a blessing elixir come up with such a novel idea? At this moment, some wizards who also belonged to the potions family had begun to figure out what kind of means to use to dig this wizard to their side. Representative Foley shook his head. It's not me. But the refiner of this potion has a lot to do with me. Guess what? Everyone was not surprised, and one by one began to think about the more famous potions master of the Foley family. Kent Foley, Albert's uncle, was just far away. It is speculated that as soon as he said it, he was refuted by the wizard next to him. The old guy is old, but very rigid, and this novel idea must have come from a young wizard. Young wizard, Brad Foley. I remember he was in his 60s this year. And the potions made have always been fantastic. Everyone nodded, but it was quickly overthrown. Then propose new people again. Of course, no one guessed about those who were recruited into the Foley family. After all, Mr. Foley had already said that he was very close to him. Then those who were recruited were also excluded. After guessing for almost half an hour, everyone couldn't help it. Master Foley, tell us the answer. Quote, yes, which potions master is it? Albert Foley looked at the impatient looks of everyone, laughed, and pulled his son. Since everyone is a little anxious, then I won't hide it from everyone. The inventor of the alienation potion is my son, Braun Foley. Wow, the originally quiet hall instantly became noisy. The wizards exchanged ears and looked at Braun in amazement. His son, at such a young age. I haven't started school yet. 35. Not really, and the magic is low. When he woke up, he had just extinguished the candle, and he was divorced by the Parkinsons. 55. Maybe it's Foley who is building momentum for his son. 39. Maybe it is. My children, like Foley's son, have not even recognized the herbs yet. After being surprised, everyone also doubted Mr. Foley's words. One of the most common claims is that Mr. Foley is campaigning for his son. It's just that a small number of people don't agree with this statement. If you create momentum, wouldn't it be nice to take out a few basic potions at random? And where did such a novel potion recipe come from? 877. Of course I bought it. A wizard said disdainfully. Who knew that the wizard who spoke just now had a sneer on his face at this moment? You buy me one to try. No potions master would sell such a recipe. You are not a potions master, just like you look like you have developed limbs. Maybe I didn't even pass potions when I was in school. Just when the two were arguing and about to fight, Snape spoke up. This potion was indeed made by Braun Foley. I can prove it. Snape's words stopped the debate. There was some surprise and consternation in their eyes. Really, are you doubting me? 35. Snape asked with a frown. No, I don't have that idea. The wizard quickly denied it. Snape ignored him and glanced at everyone. I never tell lies, nor do I have an interest in telling lies. As soon as these words were spoken, those who originally doubted no longer doubted. Snape is a potions master and head of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Under the blessing of dual identities, the weight of speech is indeed not low. At least more believable than Mr. Foley's words. Since he said that the potions were refined by the Foley children, it means that there is absolutely no possibility of counterfeiting. Although at the moment the identity of the creator of the alienation agent is determined. But everyone did not feel the slightest excitement. Look at the stage wearing a tuxedo. A little boy who looks a little thin. On the contrary, it became more and more shocked. How big is Braun AFDB? It's just 10 years old. I didn't even go to school, and the magic riot was only a year old. But it was such a seemingly mediocre child who invented such a powerful potion. What does this mean? This means that Braun's talent for potions is unmatched. As long as he can grow up smoothly, then he can occupy a place in the wizarding world even if he has no other inventions. Can be recorded in the history of potions. And this also means that the Foley family, which has begun to fall into decline, will be glorified again. Some families who were originally friendly with the Foley family but have been somewhat estranged in recent years have begun to think about mending their relationship with the Foley family after a banquet. Some people with active minds are even more stingy with praise at this moment. Complimenting Braun is like Merlin being reborn. And some of the faces of some who are not so close to the Foley family are a little ugly at this moment. One by one, they were like dead, their faces were black, and their eyes flashed and they didn't know what they were thinking. Abruptly, a word that I don't know who said broke everyone's praise. The Parkinsons are interesting now. When everyone heard the voice, their eyes also began to have a different look. I saw it in the crowd. A strong man in a suit blushed and lowered his head and did not dare to speak. But if you look closely at his eyes, you can see that it is not anger but fear and worry. Looking at the appearance of the strong man, the wizards also looked playful one by one. Some wizards who were originally still calm couldn't help but show a little smile at this moment, thinking in their hearts. I forgot about this unlucky ghost. Isn't this Sack Parkinson? I really didn't expect him to come. Quote, do you still have to think about it? It must have been deliberately invited by Albert's guy for his bad taste. Miserable. This is a miserable Parkinson's family. If I say that Sark is unlucky enough. As soon as the front foot returned the marriage with the people, the back foot invented this magical potion. Regardless of him so much, let's just watch the excitement. Listen to the wizards. Sack Parkinson is now angry and bruised. But he still clenched his fists and didn't dare to say anything. It's just that the remorse in my heart engulfs it like a raging sea. The bitterness even poured into his mouth. He was also extremely resentful of the wizard who mentioned him. After publicly withdrawing from marriage last year, he began to regret it when he returned home. The Foley family is also a family with a long heritage. Although he is an upstart on the surface, he really can't compare with the background. But thinking of the faint magic of the Foley son, he constantly comforted himself. The allies of the Foley family will surely slowly begin to stop being attached to the Foleys. I'm just one step ahead of them. Plus there is a solicitation from the Malfoy family. Gradually, I didn't care much. I thought things would pass so peacefully. Who would have thought that Albert Foley's son really had the conditions to go to Hogwarts? This made his originally calm heart can't help but tense again. Originally, when he received Foley's invitation, he was ready to accept Albert Foley's plea to enter into a marriage contract again. And he also agreed to push the boat smoothly. The two sides were in peace, as if nothing had happened. But when he came, he found that this was not the case. Instead of looking at himself, Foley didn't even make sense. This made him feel annoyed. I thought, if Foley pleaded with him for a while, he must drop his face fiercely. But who would have thought that things did not go in the direction he imagined? When Mr. Foley stood on the stage and looked into his somewhat meaningful eyes, Sack Parkinson's heart faintly felt a little bad. When Snape came on stage to explain the potion, he knew he was going to suffer. However, there was still some anticipation in my heart. Hopefully, the potions were only refined by one of the potions masters of the Foley family. If so, he was willing to do whatever it took to poach the potions master. But the end result is, the child of the Foley family, who was called the Foley family by the wizarding world and was publicly divorced by himself, turned out to be a potions genius. And himself, Sack Parkinson, became a clown who set off such a genius. And what he used to think was a wise decision has become synonymous with stupidity. He even said that he did not dare to imagine what kind of revenge his family would suffer later. Mr. Foley also felt as if he had just seen Parkinson's at the moment. The tone is pompous, and the movements are exaggerated. Ouch, isn't this the Parkinson's housemaster? What's wrong? Is it uncomfortable to blush? Would you like to take a break? Drink some potions. After all, as my son's former husband, it's still okay to give you some potions to heal fire. Of course you can rest assured that I don't want money. My long family history and blood glory have taught me that tolerance is a good virtue. And not like some nouveau riche who have no history and rise through dirty means with evil flowing in their blood. Vile, greedy, slut, no shame, stab in the back. Every time Mr. Foley said a word, Sack Parkinson, who had his head down, clenched his fists fiercely, and his teeth crunched from being bitten. Even the nails piercing into the flesh were not the slightest bit noticed. His body trembled slightly, as if he was enduring the anger in his heart. But even he already did. Mr. Foley still wasn't going to let him go. Instead, he said with indifference, "Did you say it was Patrick Parkinson?" The atmosphere around became eerie. One by one, they stared at Sack Parkinson to see how he answered. Sack Parkinson stared at Foley on stage with blood-red eyes. The fist was released and clenched, but in the end he held back the anger and squeezed the words out of his teeth. "That's right, you're right, Lord Foley, that's right." He bowed his head. At this moment, he knew that he could not face Foley at this time on his own. Mr. Foley sneered, looking at Sack Parkinson, who looked down. He only felt the anger in his heart vent. Although it is said that it did not achieve the results you most wanted. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.